Let's call the July 12th, 2021 meeting to order. Ellie, can I have a roll call?
Reagan.
Here.
Forsythe.
Here.
Lightfoot.
Here.
Sheridan.
Here.
Smithers.
Here.
Denisha.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Akers.
Here.
Fay.
Here.
Haggard.
Here.
Diaco.
Here.
Burke.
Here.
Arquette.
Here.
Terminelli. Curran.
Terminelli has been excused.
Okay.
Legislators, Terminelli may be joining us at 7:30 possibly, but maybe not either, so.
Okay.
She has been excused.
Curran.
Here.
14 present.
Okay. So. Today, would you lead us in prayer, followed by the presentation?
Our heads, please. Dear Heavenly Father, this evening we thank you for the opportunity to gather here as citizens of this great and wonderful nation. A nation rich with equal opportunities, religious freedoms, justice, and tolerance. Too often, however, we take the rights and privileges that have been afforded us by those who have gone before for granted. We ask that you grant us the wisdom to accept all people as children of God. Grant us the wisdom to be tolerant and just in our dealing with one another. Grant this body the wisdom to make the best decisions during our deliberations and the courage to stand behind them. Give us the strength to set our differences for the greater good. When our evening's work has been completed, we ask that you guide each of us on our journeys home and grant us all a safe return. For all these things, we ask for divine guidance and blessing through Jesus Christ, your Son, in whose name all things are possible.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time I need a motion to approve the agenda for this evening. Mr. Perkins, second by Mr. Curran. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Approval of the minutes from June 7th. Is there a motion? Mr. Curran, seconded by, is that you, Tony? Raise your hand. Tony. Seconded by Tony Arquette. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. The next thing on the agenda is the COVID update.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I amend the agenda to move the resolution related to the fishing tournaments in Messina to the front of the meeting? We have Supervisor O'Shaughnessy here for that purpose, and I think it's fairly late in the agenda. Would that be possible?
That's possible. If, Ms. Kern seconds that motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Steve. Steve and I go way back. For the COVID update though, do you want to do that after too?
The calls.
What's that?
Let's do the whole answer to that. I think Dr. Williams is on screen here right now.
Yeah, we'll do the COVID update and then, communications, and then we'll do, Steve. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Williams.
I think we're gonna have Jolene go first, if that's okay with you.
That's fine, Jolene, go ahead.
Okay. Screen. Too many screens open. Okay. So as of today, we have 7,570 cases to date. We have 2 current hospitalizations, 14 active cases, and 7,459 have completed isolation, and we have 97 cumulative deaths. We also, just in case anybody hasn't noticed, changed our reporting to the media to Mondays and Thursdays. For our daily hospitalizations, we are averaging about 1 to 2 hospitalizations a day right now. So we are still having people hospitalized, but it is a lot lower than where we have been. For our weekly cases, this week with 1 day remaining in the reporting week, we have 13 cases, and that's been about what we've seen for the last month. Last week, we did only have 8 cases, but we also had, with the holiday in there was no testing available for mainly on Sunday and Monday. So what we've been averaging about 1 to 2 cases per day. So our average daily new cases this week is 2.6. Last week we were at 2, the week before 1.7, the week before that 2.1. So we are right around that 2 cases per day. With our weekly school cases, we did expect all this to drop off with school closing. We have had 1 new school case so far in July. And then in June, we were down to 1.5 cases per week. And this does still include students and staff. With our college cases, with college still in session, we are seeing the decrease. They are still doing their testing, but we have not had any cases this week. We did have 1 within the last week though. So for isolation and quarantine, we have 14 right now on active isolation and 35 individuals in quarantine. And then so far a total of 35,309 have completed isolation and quarantine for a total of 35,358. And then just an update on our vaccine distribution. So far as a health department, we have administered first doses. So that could be Moderna, Pfizer, or Johnson & Johnson, 5,874. And second doses, 4,947. And we have done a change with how we're doing vaccines. So during the month of July, every Tuesday and Wednesday from 8:30 to 2:30, you can come to the public health department. We are administering Pfizer. Appointments can be made, but they're not necessary. We take walk-ins. In August, we are switching to have our clinics on Mondays and Wednesdays, as we are going to be opening up our normal immunization clinics. And so we'll be scheduling the Pfizer along with our normal immunization clinics. So this week we are going to be, tomorrow we're at the Richville Fire Department, and that is for Pfizer. And then on Saturday, we have worked with the chamber to provide Johnson & Johnson at Bassmasters at Whitaker Park. Next week, we are doing second doses of Pfizer at the Norfolk Fire Station 3. And we are doing first doses at Edwards Fire Department and also the Ogdensburg Farmers Market. And one of the questions that's come up quite a bit is, where are masks still required? So pursuant to the New York State Department of Health Regulation 66-3.1, as adopted on June 23rd, 2021, anybody over the age of 2 that's medically able to tolerate should wear a mask if they're not vaccinated in a public place, provided the person is not present in a pre-kindergarten to 12th grade school, public transit, homeless shelter, correctional facility, nursing home, healthcare setting, or other setting where mask use is required by federal, state law, or regulation. Any employee who is present in the workplace and is not fully vaccinated, a mask shall be provided and shall wear a mask when in direct contact with customers or members of the public, or unable to maintain social distancing. Employees of food establishments who are not fully vaccinated must wear a mask or face covering at all times while at their place of work. And businesses must provide that face covering. And then the one large scale event, indoor events, that was the one capacity limit that did not get lifted. So that is more than 5,000 attendees shall require patrons who are not fully vaccinated to wear a face mask. And then also, no business owner shall deny services to or discriminate against any person that elects to wear a mask. that is designed to inhibit the transmission of COVID-19. And then on Friday, July 9th, the CDC did issue updated guidance for K-12 schools. It came out on Friday. The New York State Department of Health is reviewing it and will update their guidance upon completion of review for what we will have to follow come the fall for the schools. And then who still has to quarantine? So individuals who are not fully vaccinated or have not recovered from COVID-19 in the previous 3 months, anyone with symptoms following an exposure. And we are, last time I said this, I think I had until November. They're now at least until quarantine and isolation will continue at least until December from what we're hearing from the State Department of Health. And I will turn it over to Dr. Williams.
Thanks, Jolene. So I did want to, as usual, just sort of start with national trends because that does tend to inform what happens locally. As people are probably aware, recently there's been an uptick in cases on a national level. And if you look at the actual percent increase, it's about 59% increase in total cases for a 14-day average. Hospitalizations are also going up by 8%. And this is despite the fact that testing is not happening as frequently. Fortunately, the number of deaths is going down. I did want to keep things in perspective, however. So if you look at the number of cases that we're talking about, even though there's a significant percentage increase, there's really just 18,000 cases across the country. And if you look back in April, we were at 75,000 cases per day. And back in January, it was 300,000 cases per day. So we're concerned about the percentage increase, but the absolute number of cases nationally is still quite low. What we are seeing is sort of a new trend in the epidemiology where we're developing these hotspots in the country. And specifically, there are at least 173 counties in the US where there's now more than 100 COVID cases per 100,000 people per day. And what you see with these hotspots is that almost every one of these counties has a vaccination rate of less than 40% of their population. So what we're seeing is that these COVID hotspots are pretty much directly related to low vaccination counties, which begs the question of how we're doing in St. Lawrence County. And what we see is that there have been more than 100,000 doses administered. If you look at our 18-year-old plus population, we're at 64% having received at least one dose. And if you look at the total population, we're at 53% having received at least one dose of vaccine in the county. Breaking this down by age, our 70 to 79-year-old age group, which is one of the highest risk age groups, is at 96%, so that's tremendous. And our 15 to 19-year-old age group is actually at 59%, so we've really made some pretty significant progress. If you look at the trend per week, and I brought us back to week 15, where we were doing, that was our peak. There were about 7,000 vaccines administered that week, and a lot of that was because of the mass vaccination center. There's been a pretty steady decline, and we're now at about 600 per week. Again, certainly there's not a lot of 70 to 79-year-olds to vaccinate, so some of this is a product of our own success, but some of it is that the vaccinations are slowing down a little bit. I did want to give a quick update on the Longhaul Syndrome because this is something that's certainly concerning. So there was a recent trial where they looked at about 500,000 people, and when they surveyed them, they found that about 37% of them experienced at least one COVID-related symptom more than 12 weeks after infection. And the symptoms are the ones that we're hearing about, so fatigue, shortness of breath, chest pain, brain fog were the common symptoms. There was also a study looking at college students. It was a survey study. It was not a perfect study, but they found a pretty alarming number of these students were still having COVID symptoms a number of weeks after the acute illness had resolved. And again, the same kind of symptoms, exercise intolerance, dyspnea, which means shortness of breath, chest pain, problems with smell, problems with lymph nodes being enlarged, and loss of appetite. The CDC had also previously reported that for previously healthy young adults, even after 2 to 3 weeks, at least 1 in 5 still had persistent symptoms. So the bottom line in terms of long haul is, we focus a lot on death from COVID because that's an important measure, but there's definitely a significant percentage of long haul patients, and we shouldn't ignore that. That rate of long haul patients does seem to extend to younger people, and I think as we talk about vaccination in younger adults and in adolescents, it should be taken into consideration. We have learned a lot about the epidemic, and one of the things that we've brought up in this context and other people have talked about is mental health. And there's studies now coming out looking retrospectively, and one study that was published by the CDC was looking at emergency department visits for attempted or suspected suicide attempts among U.S. Teenagers, particularly women or girls. And what they showed was that there was a 51% increase from February to March of 2021. And the reason I bring this up is when we talk about mitigation efforts, people use the term social distancing. We try and talk about physical distancing, but the fact of the matter is it does end up being social distancing. And I think things like the lack of in-person schooling, decreased contact with peers, decreased contact with supportive adults, grandparents, teachers, coaches, lack of sports and physical fitness, I think they really, on some level, probably contributed to the mental health crisis that we saw this past year. And mental health is complicated, but social isolation, if you ask any mental health expert, social isolation does not help. So I think partly because of not just the mental health crisis, but because of other concerns, the CDC did issue new guidance, and Jolene mentioned this about 3 days ago, and they really acknowledged that in-person learning is valuable and that it should be a priority. So this is for schools. They also made the observation that community rates of transmission actually impact the school rate of transmission, not the other way around, which was one concern people had. They're emphasizing a layered strategy of interventions. So that's things that Jolene had talked about. So number one, certainly promoting vaccination, but talking about masks when appropriate, physical distancing, screening, testing, ventilation, hand washing, things that you're all familiar with, but using them in a layered manner. One of my questions is the scalability of this. So if you look at the CDC's strata of transmission level, St. Lawrence County now for quite some time has been in the low transmission, so the blue range. And I'm personally hoping that if we can keep those levels low, that our schools will be given the flexibility to sort of down-regulate some of these mitigation efforts. However, as Jolene mentioned, it's really the New York State Department of Education, the New York State Department of Health that will dictate a lot of this. Their recommendations will come out, then we'll meet with the school superintendents and do our best to get the kids back in school, keep the kids in school, and make sure the mitigation efforts are sensible. Quick update on vaccine effectiveness. There's just more and more data coming out. Something recently published looking at a 94% reduction in the risk of being hospitalized. Again, that's not a study, that's an observational study in the real world. The other thing that was just recently publicized was that when they looked at, about 18,000 deaths that occurred in the month of May, somewhere greater than 99% of the people who died were unvaccinated. So this is just additional evidence that COVID is now a preventable disease, and the key to prevention is vaccination. One question that's come up, and I think it's a very reasonable question, is there something more that we could do for people who are, for instance, unvaccinated, become infected, and they're not yet sick enough to be in the hospital? So I'm just going to share the recommendations from the NIH and from the Infectious Disease Society of America. So there is essentially one option, and it's called IV monoclonal antibody therapy. So that's like the antibody cocktail that people might have heard of. And basically, it's something that's received, it only has the emergency use authorization. It's only for patients who are over the age of 65 or younger patients who have certain risk factors for developing severe disease. It's administered by an intravenous injection, so unfortunately, it's not like a pill you can take at home. It has to be used early in the course of illness, it really has to be used when people don't feel very sick. So one of the challenges is many people who don't feel very sick are not that interested in getting an IV treatment. And it can't be used if somebody requires oxygen because of the illness. One of these agents actually recently had its approval revoked by the FDA because when it was used as a single agent, it was less effective because of the variants that are out there. But that is the one option that exists. There are multiple other treatments that we've probably all heard of in the media and social media. They're not recommended by the NIH or by the IDSA, either because they don't work, and we know they don't work, because they're unsafe, and we've discovered that, or because there's insufficient data. So if you look at things like hydroxychloroquine, there's a lot of information about that. At the end of the day, when the studies have come out, it's thought to be basically ineffective. Dexamethasone in the outpatient setting is not helpful and may be harmful. We do use that for people who are very sick in the hospital. Things like azithromycin. Ivermectin is an antiparasitic medication that's primarily used in veterinary medicine, but also a little bit in human medicine. I put a question mark next to that because it's not recommended at this time, but there are ongoing studies. There are a lot of studies out there. Some of them are positive, some of them are negative, but basically these experts feel like there's not enough information to truly recommend it, and there are some potential side effects. So again, the bottom line is that there's really either limited or no treatment for the majority of people who get sick with COVID and are outpatients. There is one option, which is the IV one, but you have to use it early. It doesn't have its full FDA approval. And one thing to keep in mind is that Longhaul Syndrome often results from people who were infected, but actually had very mild symptoms where they wouldn't have even sought medical attention. So finally, the infection is preventable by vaccination, and I think that should be the focus because there's really a lack of meaningful pre-hospital treatment. As far as safety, now in the US, more than 330 million vaccines have been administered, and certainly internationally, it's twice or three times that amount. But 160 million Americans are fully vaccinated. The FDA and the CDC are intensively monitoring the safety through these different programs. We're not going to get into the details of those. And the monitoring, again, demonstrates an excellent overall record of safety. There are two areas of concern that there's a lot of talk about, so fertility and pregnancy as far as vaccine safety. And there were two clinical trials that were recently published where they were focusing on male fertility, basically looking at sperm counts, and they saw that there was no impact from vaccination. And then the ACIP, which is the expert panel that looks at vaccine safety, looked at a whole bunch of data from pregnancies that occurred when people were vaccinated, and they found no evidence of negative effects from vaccination. Now, one thing some people may be aware of, there was an analysis, again, of the safety data, looking at out of millions of doses that were administered, there were a small number of cases involving something called myocarditis or pericarditis, which is an inflammatory condition of the heart. And there was a trend for this to happen more commonly in younger individuals who were vaccinated, and frankly, more commonly in male patients. So because this was out there, a group of physicians and nurses and research scientists from the American Academy of Pediatrics, from the CDC, from Health and Human Services, from the American Family Physicians, and American College of Cardiology, basically put out a statement about their assessment of this. And I'm summarizing it with these points, but basically they said, this is an extremely rare side effect, and only an exceedingly small number of people experience it after vaccination. Most of the cases were mild, and the individuals recovered on their own or with minimal treatment. The myocarditis and pericarditis are much more common if you get the infection from COVID, and the risk to the heart from COVID infection is much more severe than anything people got from the vaccination. Vaccines are safe and effective. They prevent the illness. They help protect you. They help protect your family. They keep your community safe. These experts basically strongly encourage everyone age 12 or older who's eligible to receive the vaccine to get vaccinated, because the vaccines, outweigh any potential harm. And they bring up the issue of the Delta variant because there's increased circulation of the Delta variant, which I'm going to talk about. It does seem to affect younger people more commonly. The risks of being unvaccinated are far greater than any rare side effect from the vaccine. And then finally, if you get COVID, the infection, you could get severely ill, be hospitalized, or even die. Even if your infection is mild, you or your child could have long-term symptoms following COVID infection, such as neurologic problems or diminished lung function. And then as an addendum, they also included some data about the risk of hospitalization from COVID in children is 3 times greater than it is for the flu. In the US, more than 330 children have died directly from COVID, and more than 16,000 have been hospitalized. There's a real concern that Delta may make those numbers worse. From my perspective, again, I think if people have questions, especially about vaccination of the younger group, you should ask your child's doctor or healthcare provider. So finally, I did want to give a quick update on the Delta variant. There's a lot of information in the news about that. So the Delta variant, which is a new strain of COVID, was initially found in India in October of last year. Probably the reason why India had such a tough time with so many deaths and infections. It's highly contagious. Most of the information seems to say that it's about 60% more transmissible than the Alpha variant, which is the current dominant strain in the US, which used to be called the UK variant, just to confuse everyone. It's also more likely, so the Delta variant is more likely to cause severe illness. The risk of hospitalization if you are infected with the Delta variant is about twice as much as the current most common variant. And it's more likely to infect younger individuals. I think the jury's still out about whether it's infecting younger individuals because their vaccination rate is lower or because there's something specific about this strain, but either way, more young people are being infected with the Delta variant. So does the vaccine work, or do the vaccines work? And what we know is that with Pfizer and Moderna, if people have received 2 shots, there's a study in England that showed it's 88% effective at preventing symptomatic infection, and it's 94% effective at preventing hospitalization. There's data from Israel that shows there's a 95% protection from severe disease or hospitalization. It's important to note that these studies did show that if you had incomplete vaccination, so 1 shot of the 2-shot series of Pfizer and Moderna, you had significantly lower protection. So that's just to encourage people who only had 1 shot to get their 2nd shot. As far as Johnson & Johnson, on July 2nd, they released data that said that there was no significant decrease in effectiveness of their vaccine. So again, the bottom line is that all 3 vaccines do provide substantial protection from the Delta variant. So just to summarize, nationally, there's this significant increase in the number of COVID cases. The trend seems to be driven by the Delta variant, and it's made worse by low vaccination rates in certain areas of the country. The Delta variant's more contagious, it infects younger people, it's more likely to make people ill, and I think by the end of this month, or certainly by the end of the summer, it will be the dominant strain in the US. Despite the national trends, St. Lawrence County continues to have a very low rate of infection, and I think Jolene did a great job of underscoring that, and that's something we should all be pleased with and proud of. Vaccination with any of these 3 vaccines in the US does provide strong protection against infection, serious illness, and death from COVID, and this protection does extend to the Delta variant. There's very little effective outpatient treatment for COVID, so prevention really should be the plan, and prevention is done with vaccination. Full resumption of normalcy, so in-person schooling, sports, business, social and religious activities are essential to the health and well-being of our community. Maintaining a low prevalence of COVID is critical for making this remain a reality. And then finally, vaccination really does seem to be the most effective tool at keeping COVID at bay. It protects the individual, it protects our families, and it protects our communities. So if you're eligible but not vaccinated, please seek accurate information about the safety and effectiveness of the vaccines, and let's all help to keep the COVID pandemic at bay and hopefully end it. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Is there anyone who has any questions? Dr. Williams, Mr. Rick, go ahead.
Dr. Williams, can you talk a little bit about Pfizer and the development of a booster shot? I mean, it's really early. We're seeing it in the news. Do you have any data or an opinion on that? I mean, Dr. Fauci, I think, said Sunday it's not necessary, so I'd like to hear what you would have to say.
Yes, so my impression at this point is that a booster shot is not necessary. Pfizer is announcing that they're in the process of studying and developing one, but I think based on the data that's currently available, a booster shot is not necessary at this time.
Get started. Any other questions? I can use it because I can't get anything. No further questions? Thank you very much. Oh, well, we get to participate from the legislators. We didn't even talk this to people. I haven't run yet. What's that? I haven't run yet. Okay, well, you're on your way. Okay, any other questions from the legislators? Thank you, Ben. Next, we have some communications from Kelly.
Yeah. A letter was received from the Governor Rescue Squad requesting the County Board of Legislators grant them a portion of the funds from the American Rescue Act for the purchase of an ambulance with an enhanced airborne filtration system and 2 video larynxoscopes to outfit all vehicles in their fleet. I also have 2 citizen participation emails that I'll read in their entirety. The first one's from Michelle Whalen of Morristown. I would like you all to not vote to donate $88,000 of tax dollar to the bass tournaments that are causing harm to the river. I'd request you to ask local fishermen and taxpayers and river property owners how they feel about this invasion. If Messina and Tony want the tournaments, then the fishermen should be required to not come upriver past the bridge. 80 boats are coming to the Morristown area and disrupting life on and in the river. They are purposely driving the bass off the spawning beds and causing harm that won't be reversed in our lifetime. I've watched them with their cones looking at the beds to locate the spawning bass and then driving them off. You have no business giving tax dollar to this boondoggle just so Jim Reagan can say we are the best bass fishery in the world. You can't offer any justification for this expenditure as you can't show any return on investment that comes even close to the $30,000 you've already dumped on it. You have created a situation where local fishermen can't even fish the river, and we are the taxpayers here. You have no clue how rude these guys are. Come to my house any morning during the tournament and see for yourself. The second one is from Jeff Yett of Parishville. My name is Jeffrey Yett, and my wife and I have been fostering parents for going on 6 years. In that time, we have been blessed to share our home with approximately 30 foster children. While our experience has been positive at times, we certainly have had others when we felt that the child's best interest isn't the primary goal of the agency. That is the cause for a current placement. Our concerns can be broken down into the following areas: delay in finding permanency for children in care, not following court orders on visitation schedules, ignoring reports from foster parents of concerns regarding the well-being of children, allowing biological parents to self-report on their progress, lack of direct involvement from DSS. We have my wife's young cousin in our foster care who just turned 5 years old this past March. At the time of this writing, he has been in our home for over 1,673 days. That's exactly 4 years and 7 months. We'll pass the 15-month mandate to file the termination of parental rights as defined in the Adoption and Safe Families Act of 1997. We have already adopted his younger half-sibling and wish to provide a permanent home for him. This past October, the court ordered every other weekend visits between the child and his parental grandparents. After only 1 weekend visit and 1 weekend off, we were then informed that DSS was changing the visitation plan to every weekend. Within a short period of time, the child started showing signs that the visits were stressful to him and that he frequently doesn't want to go. There have been times where it has been pretty traumatic for him, where he runs and hides and is often crying and screaming that he doesn't want to go. After we physically forced him to go on one occasion, we reported the incident to Fostering Futures case planner, who told us we were absolutely not to force him to go in the future, to report it to the Fostering Futures and they would cancel the visit. Yet less than 2 months later, a Fostering Futures transport visitation supervisor came to pick up the child, who refused to go again. And then she instructed to do whatever it took to get him to go, including bribing the child with a treat or extra play when he returned to our home after the visit. This has been an ongoing documented concern since August of 2019, some of which have been witnessed or reported directly by 4 separate Fostering Future representatives. Yet the permanency hearing reports continue to reflect that there have been no behavioral issues or concerns reported. Another concern is allowing the biological father, a registered sex offender, to self-report that everything is going well with mental health counseling and probation. This is then reflected in an updated service plan review document that shows positive progress. However, in contrast, a recent Rubenzahl, Knudsen, and Associates Psychological Services evaluation recommended that the biological father continue to have only supervised contact with his child for at least another 12 months, and he recently failed a polygraph test through probation. Yet DSS still has the permanency goal of return to the parent. Similarly, the biological grandparents have been allowed to supervise visits between the child and his biological father, so there's no outside unbiased evaluation on how visits are going. Lastly, while I understand that Fostering Futures is contracted to do the bulk of the work concerning foster placements, DSS is still supposed to be hands-on with case to a point. I believe they are supposed to make an in-person contact with the child in the foster home at least once a quarter. This child has been in our care for over 4.5 years, and a DSS employee hasn't been in our home the entire time. How is the agency supposed to make recommendations on the best interest of the child if reports are not reflected in permanency hearings, if biological parents are allowed to self-report on their progress, and if they haven't seen the child directly themselves? This is a complicated case, and there are other factors that come into play, but the bottom line should always be what is best for the child, and it is my belief that DSS is not doing what is in his best interest. Thank you for your time and consideration. Jeff Yap, Parrishville.
Thank you, Kelly. Before we get into the resolutions, we'll have citizen participation. So I'll ask that each citizen who wants to speak, stand at the podium, and you'll have 5 minutes. And you'll tell us what your name is and what township you're from. And I will call your name according to this list here, and forgive me if I have a difficulty or a little difficult time trying to figure out some of these signatures. But the first person would be Francine Griffin.
My name is Francine Griffin. I live in Madrid. I'm not going to get into the 6-year-long case that I've had with CPS. I did receive my letter, one of the letters that was presented. I stood up against CPS misconduct and wrongdoing, and I feel I was retaliated against. It is being proven that misconduct and wrongdoing by CPS employees has and is going on within that system. Some wish to be here in support of us tonight, but we're afraid of retaliation because of the positions of the people they know. They have stated that the Good Old Boys Club is alive and well in St. Lawrence County. Very telling and disturbing, but not surprising. I believe the Board of Legislators knew of the problems within CPS and contributed to them. I believe numbers were presented over and over again. CPS needed more workers. I've heard timelines and thoroughness. Those who tried got burnt out, and the good caseworkers left. I believe you knew it and nothing was done. Now you have a huge mess on your hands. We want answers and accountability for the wrongdoing, misconduct, and injustices many of us have come up against. Many claim to not know these issues existed. So we are bringing these issues out publicly, so no one can claim they didn't know. I hope changes will be made from this information that's being presented. I also wish to ask for the resignation of Legislator John Burke. He knew of some of the issues within DSS, and he has publicly stated that he thinks the board should stand behind DSS. I have to wonder why. are not going to be silenced. Our children no longer are going to be silenced. Thank you.
Will, looks like ROOSSIE. Will, the gentleman here, by the name of Will.
Bill Brewer.
SSIE, I guess.
Sorry about that.
I thought I wrote a pretty good M, I don't know.
Well. Some people probably would.
Greetings and thank you for the privilege of letting me speak this evening. I was back here in February with my concerns facing the children in St. Lawrence County. After that presentation, I was arrested again. The first stalking case was dismissed. Now I'm going through a second stalking case. An innocent man's tool, you see, and nobody knows this, is the trial. You know, I look forward to going to trial on all these charges that I'm facing because they're false accusations. So here I am again. I was told by the sheriff that freedom of speech comes with consequences. So be it. My speech concerns children and them not having a voice. They have no voice because they are no longer living. They have names but no voice. I could give you a little history. You know, if you ask me what I want the end of corruption. And I could give you a little history about my knowledge of me buying a home and having the lawyer who represented me represent the bank, represented the homeowner, who then came after me with the sheriff, but we all know corruption exists and we can't get rid of it. So here's what I want. Here's what I want from you as a board of legislators. Mr. and Mrs. Legislator. It certainly seems like the ESS was under attack by some of these letters. We as a group need to compile the facts and present them to the public so the staff aren't being targeted. We've never had enough foster homes. ESS staff is talented. Some would argue that the staff is particularly trained and capable of handling more difficult situations. Instead of saying that publicly, ask yourself, what would Treyana say? She doesn't have a voice. Mr. DA, disorderly conduct. All you people be the judge. I'm being prosecuted for disorderly conduct for attempting to do what I'm doing right now, twice. I've done it twice for you, so I guess I'm going to go the rest of the arrest. Instead of prosecuting a whistleblower for speaking out against sexual misconduct by teachers, instead of prosecuting an innocent man based on false accusations, instead of taking away a man's license based on a sheriff's perjury, instead of releasing a felon. Remember, some adults are standing here because children are abused, and our children need people like us to stand for them. I can tell you now, these people are not, like me, are not going away. We are not afraid of malicious prosecution because these children need us. Mr. DA, hunt down and prosecute felons like Eric Hunter for crimes against children. Mr. Superintendent, instead of covering the atrocities of sexual misconduct, instead of falsely accusing whistleblowers, instead of modeling bullying, instead of allowing staff to bully, instead of allowing a teacher to promote bullying through classroom instruction, what would Riley say? He lost his voice. Mr. Principal, instead of having problems in house solved rather than reporting them, instead of turning your back on signs of abuse or turning away children from a child who has come to you, turning your back on a child who has come to you for help, instead of doing that, what would Shiley say? You don't have her voice. School board president, school board. Instead of adopting policies that limit public speech, instead of finishing a meeting under 10 minutes, instead of having a whistleblower arrested for false accusations, listen to the voices of those kids who are raped, beaten, and trafficked. These children are in your district. Listen to their voice. You are elected for the children. You are not there to protect the institution that you were elected for. Mr. County Attorney, instead of blocking FOIL documents, instead of putting sheriffs outside of a person's house to watch them, I ask you to resign anything to do with DSS. You will not protect them. Let me get to what I want to say since I'm running out of time. What do I really want? I want you to remember the names that are still here. Lucia, I want you to listen to her voice. I want you to remember the names that are still here. Cheyenne, I want you to listen to their voice. I'm not sure DSS is any better now than it ever has been. If you want to make DSS better, start listening to children. If you listen to them, then you'll know what to do. Realistically, you can't really get rid of corruption. It's human nature. So unless you're willing to take down everything, it's not going to work. So all I ask is that while you have this great opportunity before you, you have a clean slate. You have the opportunity before you to create an organization that will eliminate corruption within its own regard. The names and the voices need a safe place, independent of local government and politics. One run regardless of funding, without constraints. One more second. Run by a board dedicated to the safety of children. Please take your time to design this with our children in mind. It is a great endeavor, one that shouldn't be taken lightly. Make it safe for their voices.
Claudia's on film. That's all. Claudia's been film. Over in New York.
Yes.
Claudia?
No, 40.
I submitted it online. I did an online submission.
You submitted it online?
Yes, I sent it over.
Okay.
We can have that at the end, Bill.
We'll have it at the end.
Yeah, there's 2 recordings.
All right, let's go with the Courtney back home. Same thing. Okay. And then we've got Melody Pike.
Good evening, legislators and respective parties. I approach you tonight with concerns, grave concerns of yours and operations of the state of Orange County CPS. I'm a favorite aunt to 2 nieces and a family member that has witnessed that their biased decision-making, their empty answers that are not provided to families sometimes, following proper procedures and guidelines, and just leaving family members in limbo. I'm mad at this point. I have 2 nieces that were removed May 7th last year from the custody of my sister and brother-in-law due to substance abuse and domestic violence. I received a call that a removal was going to take place because we were in the middle of a pandemic. There was a court appearance that was going on through, I believe, Zoom, telephone. I was able to bring my 75-year-old mother over there and try to water down as much as possible as I could what was going to take place. We kept the shades closed because I knew that within 45 minutes, the law would be there to do a removal. And mind you, the removal was done and nobody in my family was contacted as possible placement. I do have broken family members. My sibling relationship is not good, but I've been the powerhouse sibling of my siblings. I should have been considered for placement with my nieces. They've been in commissioner's custody since May of last year to this present day. There's been lots of inconsistencies where no one gets any answers. Change of caseworkers, change of supervisors, change of commissioner. My brother-in-law has almost gained full custody of both of my nieces. My oldest niece is not biologically his, so he's had to jump through some hoops with the family court system and CPS system itself, as my family has. When the removal took place, I walked outside before my nieces did or my mother, because those were my greatest concerns at that point. There was border patrol, undercovers, Messina PD, troopers, sheriff's department. And I couldn't believe what was going on, because if you look up at March 5th, the day before, there was a drug bust in St. Lawrence County. And I'm quite familiar, what I witnessed on that yard that day was exactly what that drug bust looked like. The caseworkers introduced them to me. There was officers, the end of my sister's street was barricaded off. The caseworkers introduced themselves to me, and I said, I'm concerned why this is taking place. And my blame did go on our local PD, which I have apologized to the individual. I said, I'm concerned why this is taking place because your department was here 2 weeks ago for a possible heroin overdose, which would have warranted an emergency removal that night. They could have been with me that night. So either you didn't call the on-call caseworker, which when I went and apologized 2 days later, they certainly did. The on-call caseworker never reported to my sister's house till 3 o'clock the next afternoon. Their decision-making had the constant trickling effect of trauma on my nieces, on my family, and we don't want to make it about my family, but it's about my family. With constant calls, they probably almost felt harassed. The agency that depicts this moral compass that they keep in the best interest is our children, they don't. And I've seen it and I've witnessed it. Their moral compass maybe shined a bit of light because they allowed calls to be made to my mother, who's failing in health. She's been a matriarchal in helping raise my nieces with drug addiction through my sister, so on and so forth. So haven't I. Irregardless, my sisters don't, or my nieces don't know anything but love. They should have been with me. They've been in 4 foster homes. One of the foster homes they were in this past year was an employee of CPS, and sexual allegations came to light. My niece was put under a forensic interview without her parents next to her. Traumatic. They've had people in and out of their lives, in and out of their door, and anybody who's danced in a family courtroom, I have on a divorce statistic 14 years, children have a Bill of Rights. Alienation of affection is one of them. It has been indirectly brought upon my nieces through the decisions with CPS. I look for answers, questions, resolutions. We had a permanency hearing in April. Everything had been gone through. The legal department was supposed to cite presidential cases where step-parents had gained custody of their children that weren't biologically theirs. They did not do the paperwork. My oldest niece is in foster care until October now. It's delayed. I would like some answers, some resolutions, and once again, some preventative measures to prevent this happening from another Melody Pike who loves her nieces very much.
Mary Catherine Skelly.
Good evening, St. Lawrence County Legislators. My name is Mary Skelly. I am a mother to a child who was abducted from school in South Florida and trafficked for 10 days. She bravely escaped her traffickers. On the first attempt, she was brutally beaten. She was held at gunpoint. She was tortured. She was sold to $2,000 to $3,000 per sale. Our lives were destroyed, absolutely destroyed. There are days that I feel the same pain when I went to school looking for my child and she was not there. She wasn't where she was supposed to be. Law enforcement wrote her off as a runaway. Nobody looked for her. I had to beg, please. Retired U.S. Marshal works with Global Children's Rescue, with boots on the ground at this very moment. He's the only one who helped me look for my child. I can't be silent. I have to be the voice for children and families that this happens, and this happens right here in St. Lawrence County. I have traveled up and down the coast for the past 3 years. I am asking that this legislative board have a resolution that human trafficking education is mandatory in schools. This resolution is vitally important to ensuring that our children are protected from being lured in by human traffickers and having their lives ruined. If your child has a smartphone, the likelihood that a predator has entered into your private living room and has made contact with them is 100%. There are programs, one of the best is BARC. They work with schools on funding. Schools set up, BARC sets up programs for schools, families, homes. It's a safe program that alerts you to bullying. Asking for children to expose themselves, luring them out of their home, promising them things at a phone that maybe mom and dad won't give them, grandma, guardian. So the human trafficking education classes would include the warning signs of human trafficking. A lot of people don't even think it exists. They know nothing about it, nothing. They don't think it's real, and they don't think it happens here in St. Lawrence County, and I'm here to tell you it does, because when I shared my story, I have been flooded. Some are scared to come forward. We're working with those young ladies and men. There's boys too. If nobody is immune from this, no family, no socioeconomic status, nobody. There are 2,300 children that go missing every day. $150 billion enterprise. One missing child is too many. So can you imagine the life that my daughter has had with that severe complex trauma? She has been in the Office of Children and Family Services. CPS wanted to charge me with neglect because she could not handle going to school, daily functions, taking a shower. She took too many, she cleansed 10 times a day. But this was looked at as delinquency. Saturday night, she got beat by 3 youth in the Office of Children and Family Services, jumped and beat. She was raped in detention in Florida. She's been bullied, she's been beaten, re-traumatized, and CPS wanted to charge me with neglect. I didn't kidnap her. So these allegations that are coming out at CPS are very concerning, and anybody that went to their defense before any evidence is brought forth should resign. That is unacceptable. Mr. Burke, resign. These are children that need to be protected. They're being silenced. How more difficult is my job as a part of the New York State Human Trafficking Task Force to find children when their captors are masked and their children are masked? It's become difficult. They know they spend days, 8 hours on computers. Please, mandatory human trafficking online safety. We lost 2 children to suicide because they were lured into exposing their body in this county, where they should be here today with us. This is the pandemic. This is the real pandemic we are facing. Our children are being exploited and abused, and the systems are failing them. Today is the end of it. I'm calling on you to start a new day today. We will protect our children. Their safety and well-being are going to become our #1 priority right now. Thank you.
Katie Bench,
No, thank you, sir.
who's not here.
I'm Terry, I'm not speaking, sir.
You have a message?
No, sir.
Okay. Andy Woodruff?
See if I can read it. Sorry, excuse me. Hi, my name is Mindy Woodruff. I'm from Canton. You're probably wondering what this case is. This is 1 out of 5 cases, plus a total of nothing but information over the past few years dealing with CPS. CPS has been very mind-opening, to say the least. I've reached out to everything possible, locally, outside sourced. I started looking up a lot more things that were actually happening in different states. I can tell you my situation, just like all the other people have. Thank you for stating it. What it comes down to is the idea of what we think is happening is very different from what is actually happening. The protocols that are put in place to protect children to make sure things are followed through are not followed through. There's plenty of people who are calling in for safety of their children from an agency that's supposed to help. That isn't. What they're actually doing is more damage. because it seems to be easier to not do your job than to actually do your job. I can't tell you how many times I've been at CPS. They said, well, we're closing down the case. It's 5 days in. We got 45, 60 days to make an assessment. 5 days of a sexual case that could have happened to a child. You think 5 days is enough for your child? You think 5 days is enough for yours? It's not acceptable. If you have children, don't think it's okay that it's happening to somebody else's family. And don't think it's not happened. It is. Believe me, it's very eye-opening. I never thought that I would ever be in this situation. But I am. And I've been having to deal with it for years and years. Kevin Akers, who's Kevin Akers? Kevin, I've spoken with you multiple different times about, probably you heard my name come up, I talked to you probably about 44 minutes to an hour for every time I talked to you. You're a very nice guy. Ruth Doyle.
She's not here
Ruth's not here. I've also spoke with her, very nice lady. I don't want to hear anymore. I'm sorry what's happening. I'm sorry. What I want to hear is, what are you going to do to make the changes? What are you going to do to make it better? I don't want to hear I'm sorry. I want to see results. And it's not for me, it's for my child. It's for all the other children that it's affecting. I see plenty of you, on your phone, Mr. Bottom, your head down, not listening. I've had multiple conversations with you. Thanks for not helping, by the way. What needs to happen is changes. I've been told multiple different times by CPS that, by Christopher Deese as well, I've talked with him multiple times, he knows me very well, that we're understaffed. We have a lot of cases, we have this, we have, X amount of time, and, there's severity in certain cases. Every case should be severe. You have no idea what's happening behind closed doors to each child. And the hoops that you actually have to jump through in order to get safety for your child. We talk about these trauma centers, the advocacy center. I've been there twice. They want children to tell them the very first time what their traumatic experience is. And if they don't do a follow-up. You tell me what's more traumatic. A kid going another time where they feel comfortable to explain what happened to them? Or do you think what's still continuing at home to them, the abuse? What's more traumatic? You have CPS workers who have also been in trouble multiple times, different times themselves. They have been hired on by CPS. They have been unfounded, right? They've had reports about them and they have the jobs. These people are not capable or should be in position of telling some other family member whether or not you're credible. It's crazy. I see parents every day. And we know typical families, the same system over and over and over again, right? These people have their children. Both parents. Both parents should not have them. But yet, they have them. Who was it that just passed away recently? I misheard. Really well known, has gotten in so much trouble. Yeah, has all his children. Guess what? His daughter died. Right, with snowmobile accident. We know the family. Everybody knows that family. Right? I don't need to mention them as a fact, but this is something that should have been changed. What I'm asking for you guys today is things need to be enforced. We've gone on too long stating that it is okay for protocols to not be followed through time and time again when it has allowed children to hang in the balance, not safety. I've had to get forensic evaluations. I've had to testify for myself. And I won, by the way. See, if I did, I won. I also filed with the court as well. Not on your fault, by the way, but thank you. And the fact that also a special appearance investigator came back to me stating that you were right, the CPS had falsified documentation, but guess what? It already affected my trial. Because this woman made an assumption, and I got her discovery, she made an assumption in 5 days, saying that my child was not affected. Guess what? She no longer works at CPS, except in a different department. So there's 5 other people that were in my case that were doing it for 28, 20, 30 years. Where are they now? Affected my life. Thank you.
Well, there was more before I listened. Patrick Green, Starvin Rancher. Bloodline's been paying taxes since 1806. Lisbon, which is a little hamlet over there by the river that is a year older than the county. I was sitting in my house one night reading the encyclopedia. 11:45 at night. I had 6 kids in my house. The mother of my children had decided that it was better to party than it was to raise kids. And a knock comes on my door. I couldn't get up, open the door. Here's 2 deputy sheriffs and a woman from social services, CPS, SUB, I don't know what they're from. And she said, "You're not drunk." And I said, "What?" "Well, we got a call that you were intoxicated and you were here with a bunch of children." I said, "Really? What time did you get the call?" "Well, we got it at 8:15. I said, 8:15? It's 11:45. Now, if there was something wrong in my house and they got a call at 8:15, I would have thought that maybe the deputy sheriffs would have come over for a wellness check by, I don't know, something like speed down the road. By 8:25, there should have been somebody in my house seeing just what the hell was going on. Nobody. What they wanted to do is they wanted to make sure that I was drunk enough that they'd be able to come in and take my kids. That's exactly what they're up to. And then it started. The feminists don't like me. Well, there's a lot of feminists that work for Department of Social Services. And I went through years, every week. I even told them who these 2 darling women were that wasn't too happy, because I've got a habit, if I know something's the truth, I'm going to tell you. Well, that hurts some people's feelings. And what they do, they use the Department of Social Services as a lever. Yeah, you know, I was stressed out enough, but they just kept coming and coming. Oh, by the way, the sheriff, she was there about 3 or 4 minutes, and she left all the deputies to leave. You know, it was as simple as that. But it continued. They threw me in jail, I don't know, 3 or 4 years later for hemp weed that grew up behind my place since World War out. It was a neighbor, Martin's. He planted it with a chicken seed during World War II. They sent him chicken feed that was full of hemp plants because for some reason out west they were growing hemp for battleships that didn't even use ropes anymore. But you know the government. The government, that's the government. He said, well, one of the reasons we went to war in the city is because we couldn't get hemp out of the Philippines anymore. We weren't even using hemp. But I don't want to go into that. That's a whole different story. But this grew up and they come in with a DEA, the sheriff, the state troopers. Gus Burns was the sheriff or the deputy or whatever, the detective. And they brought in a drug task force from places I didn't know. Chipman had a drug task force, but the number of people were there. I mean, there were a lot of Augsburg, Potsdam, Messina, and probably even Red Mills. There were people all over because they were all going to get a chunk of that change. I did 51 days in federal holding over that. And I told them when they first came there, they handed me a warrant from a judge that Mr. Fonda had never sat on a case of 9 and 20 years because he got property next to mine. He was a non-neutral judge. I told the DEA that. I told the state troopers that. I told Gus Burns that, and he said, well, you don't have to worry, they're not going to hold it here. Everybody knows that's him. Well, I ended up in Clinton County, Plattsburgh, ended up down in Janesville, south of Syracuse, 51 days. Well, I knew a lot of people. And my kids, the social services were right there. Where's my kids? Boy, we're going to take them somewhere and protect them against this long-haired piece of whatever I was sitting down there in Janesville. But I knew people. And my kids all disappeared, except for the ones that were over 16. And they came over there just about every day harassing the 2 children that were left. We're the kids, we're the kids. But I taught my kids enough education. You have a right to remain silent. And all things will, and they will be used against you. because that's why they ask me that kind of stuff. My kids were saved for that 51 days, but I can't imagine what would have happened to my kids if they wanted to have a safe haven to stay in. I think the sheriff ought to be running an investigation on the Department of Social Services, no one else. It should be the sheriff, because he's the only legal law enforcement officer in this state.
Amen.
Mr. Raven?
Hi, Rachel Raven, I'm from Governor. I didn't really plan on speaking, but given the opportunity. I am on board for Child. I am glad that we had such a good turnout, and I am really wanting to reinforce that we stand firm on our position, that our concerns with the CPS, Child Protective Services in St. Lawrence County, is real. There are a lot of, we can call them allegations, but we have tangible proof. I've talked to the families. I've lived this. I don't know, my letter was one of the 12 letters. I am 2.5 years into a trial of my own. One of the speakers tonight said it couldn't happen. It can't happen, or it does happen along any race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, etc. It happened to me. I'm a practicing nurse practitioner. I was a pastor until this happened. I'm a reputable member of the community. I don't need to get too far into my personal story, although I'm eager and happy to sit down with anyone willing to hear what's happened to me, and unfortunately, what's happened to my 2 children. I see my children 3 hours a week, 2 times, 6 total, supervised after 2.5 years. I wish I could give you a reason, but a reason, logical reason, does not exist. And yes, those are supervised visitations. I was served with 18 child neglect charges 2.5 years ago when I fled from a domestic violence dispute. And in time, the public will know the entirety of my story. And there are, among several other things, 2 unconstitutional. I'm gonna say there'll be 4 to 5 when we're done. But I can tell you that I knew nothing about the legal system until this happened to me. And there's something called out of your jurisdiction. St. Lawrence County only has authorization in making New York State. 17 of the allegations that didn't happen happened in the state of Montana and the state of Ohio. Those states didn't charge me. They're statements mainly by my daughter, who got taken in the middle of the night as she screamed and threw things and argued with police officers to not take her. The one allegation, oh, it's right in front of me. The one allegation that happened in the state of New York, and I've got it in my car if anybody wants to read it. But I gave a man in a desperate situation. He told me of a story that he lost a relative, his hours were cut, and he had housing until the end of the week. And I gave him $700. Still have means to take care of my children. I make 6 figures. I do random acts of kindness. I was a pastor at that time. That's normal for me. The one charge you'll find of child neglect is that I gave a man $700. His name was Jamal Dean. He worked at the hotel the night my kids and I were getting to safety. I still talk to him. We've actually developed a relationship and he's found Christ and he's a reasonable man. That's the only allegation that happened in the state of New York. And I heard one of the ladies tonight comment on the court not holding up to the visitation. I've had less than $200 a year with my children for the last 3 years. Birthdays, 6 of them has passed between the 2 of them. Christmases, Thanksgivings, nothing. This year I got 3 hours with my daughter on her birthday. It's the single holiday I have ever been allowed to see her. And I have 4 medical providers because DSS provided us with 3 different psych evals. All recommended my kids for counseling, and they have not been to counseling yet. Please take these serious because we are not going to be stopping. We have more momentum, and we will be back and back until there is resolve. Thank you.
We have Claudia with the online, or is it someone before? Okay. Say your name and where you're from.
My name is Casey Whitcomb. I'm from Potsdam. I'm here to voice my concerns about St. Lawrence County Child Protective Services. Some of you may or more likely not remember the last time I was present at one of these meetings. I was here 3 years ago addressing the board about this county's Child Protective Services. Many of my concerns are the same as what is being brought up to your attention by these 5 people today. However, my pleas fell upon deaf ears last time that I stood here. Thankfully, there are more people stepping forward against the corruption that has been ongoing for years, and things are being investigated. My 2 children, Stuart and Oliver, were in foster care from early 2018 to mid-2019. Thankfully, I fought very hard to get my kids back, and I was very lucky to have them home. During that time, they were moved at least 8 times, maybe more, I don't know. I wasn't notified most of the time when they were moved, and if I was, it was days after. My son was actually put into the psych ward, and I didn't realize it 3 days, I wasn't told till 3 days after, 20 minutes before our visit. They were removed from their first foster parents within 2 months of being taken from me, and after that, they were removed from the county from home to home. Most people I still never met or talked to, as if being separated from their family wasn't bad enough. They were shoved around like cattle from one owner to the next. I was left in the dark about where my children were and who they were with, and my only relief was that we had visits every week, 3 times a week, which I made most of them. If I didn't, I was sick. Or I was being told by caseworkers that I could not trust that they were okay. Changing administrators and hiring more workers will not begin to fix problems pervasive in this and many other organizations that ostensibly protect children. The youth of this county in foster care are being let down and transversely traumatized by the actions of these people. Children that are loved are being ripped away from their families and then being ripped away from loving foster parents. These children are not to be used as weapons or leverage against people, but unfortunately, I have heard the term "or else" from a caseworker one too many times. I realize that we are bringing up problems and not proposing solutions, but however, we need to first realize that there is a problem in the laws of St. Lawrence County Social Services. The people that we trust to protect our children cannot protect themselves, are just human after all. Everybody makes mistakes, but they need to be held accountable. And things need to change.
Anyone else? This will go ahead and be online.
Good evening. My name is Dottie Spears. My grandson has been in foster care with a DSS employee since he was 2 days old. He was removed on January 15th, 2021. My son and his then girlfriend had a safety plan in place. Their wish was for my husband and I to have custody. Let me give a brief background on my husband and I. We have been married for 33, almost 34 years. He has worked for the same company for 32 years and has an impeccable work ethic. I am a substitute teacher and employed by the same school district for approximately 20 years. I began as a monitor, to a teaching assistant, to a substitute. I have my master's in elementary education and have my initial teaching certification. I was working on my permanent certification and was 14 days short of earning this when COVID hit. We moved in the process and have been in our new home for a little over a year. I had been very active in the community with my 2 older grandchildren. I was a Cub Scout leader. I began a Girl Scout troop. I was PTA president, a room mother. I coached soccer and t-ball and was an assistant coach for basketball. We all live on the same property in different homes. We have almost 7 acres and have been planning with my grandson's parents since September for my grandson to move here with us. He will grow up with 5 cousins, 2 uncles, and 2 aunts to love, care, and guide him, along with my husband and I. On the day of my grandson being removed, I was in contact with a DSS employee about this and expressing our home being a placement resource. At this time, she advised me of the ICPC, and I expressed to start the process. A motion was ordered on April 29th with the follow-up during a court hearing on June 4th, where DSS stated the paperwork was in Tennessee. The paperwork was not received until approximately June 24th here in Tennessee. On January 19th, we electronically filed a custody petition. The custody petition was returned. An attached letter dated January 25th stated the notarized signatures were missing, which was untrue because those 2 pages were included in the return. It was not mailed until February 8th, and we received it on February 12th. I electronically returned the petition, which was dismissed because we did not show any extraordinary circumstances. On March 9th, I sent a request for a 30-day extended visit with my grandson under ICPC Regulation 9. The DSS supervisor quickly emailed my son and girlfriend, notifying them of this, and told them that their visitation could not occur if he was here and that home BOCES could not begin. By the way, it never did begin. It is my belief that the DSS employee wanted to discourage the parents from allowing this visit with us. On March 29th, the supervisor advised me that the ICPC affidavit was in court waiting for the judge to sign. On April 8th, an ICPC notice of motion was heard. Because no one replied, the judge dismissed it. But on April 15th, a new ICPC notice of motion was resent to all parties for a date of April 29th. My son's lawyer sent an affirmation in support of the ICPC. Finally, the judge ordered a motion to send the paperwork to Tennessee. The judge declared that an ICPC is in process of being filed on January 26th and fails to provide any information or explanation as to the delay in commencing the ICPC. On June 4th at the permanency hearing, the permanency report states the foster parents have expressed interest in being a permanent resource for should he be unable to return to his parents. The foster mother is the DSS employee. It also states that there is no, listen carefully, there is no discharge from placement or transition to another placement setting anticipated in the next 6 months. So they're not planning on sending him to us. I'm not sure about you, but this should anger you. What would you do if you were in our position and DSS was keeping your grandchild from you so a complete stranger could foster him? You most likely would be feeling what we are. Remember, there's no anticipation of a transition or replacement for my grandson within the next 6 months. Please, we request that the board investigate why it appears DSS keeps using delay tactics to keep our grandson from being placed with his paternal grandparents when this has also been what the parents have wanted. Up until April 29th, both parents have agreed to sign a custody agreement giving us custody. I can provide proof to all of the statements I have made. I do not care what your political views are. You are here to represent the people in your community, and that includes the children DSS has been in charge of. DSS has not once looked at my husband and I as a placement and what the wishes are of the parents. We have been robbed of sharing many, many firsts together as a family. We look very forward to our brief video chats together, which have bonded us. The smiles on his face when we see each other are priceless. Time is crucial here. Please, I can't beg you enough, please help bring our grandson to where he belongs.
My name is Courtney Fantone, and I am the founder and director of Community Helping Individuals Living in Distress, also known as CHILD. CHILD is an organization that offers advocacy to foster parents, kinship resources, and relatives of children in the child welfare system. I am here today in support of my St. Lawrence County clients, some of which you will hear from tonight, many of which you've previously received letters and phone calls from, and the remainder of which you will hear from in the very near future. These are families who, for years, have felt like their voices have not been heard. I am here today on behalf of foster parents like my mother, Claudia, who, like countless other individuals, opened up their homes to love and foster the children of St. Lawrence County, only to be treated poorly by caseworkers and tossed aside by agencies when their voices became too loud and their advocacy became too zealous. Most importantly, I am here today to advocate for the children, those whose names are known and those whose names are not yet known to me, because they are the ones who suffer the most when arbitrary decisions are made contrary to their best interests, which negatively impact their lives and well-being, often resulting in lifelong trauma. As the director of CHILD, I have spent the last year and a half working with families who desperately need someone to listen to their stories and point them in the direction of legal, mental health, and advocacy services. I have worked with attorneys, counselors, service providers, and advocates who wanted to help their clients, but always felt like they were spinning their wheels in the mud because the agencies were just not listening to their professional recommendations. I have spoken to countless agency employees, both current and former, who have expressed sheer disgust for the situation that this county is in right now and offered their personal insight in an attempt to help us mold a solution for the future. In the short time that I have spent as the director of CHILD, I have collected a library of data to corroborate the claims that my clients have been making. Based on this data, it is abundantly clear that there are significant and urgent concerns that I feel you, the legislators of St. Lawrence County, need to be made aware of. CHILD will continue to share these concerns with you in the same manner in which we have previously, in the form of letters submitted during legislative meetings. There are a multitude of issues in St. Lawrence County's child welfare system, so it is no longer a matter of if there is a problem here, but a matter of accepting that there is and deciding how we are going to fix it. CHILD's mission is to give every child failed by St. Lawrence County's child welfare system a voice by providing support, information, and advocacy to families, while holding agencies accountable when arbitrary decisions are made contrary to the child's best interest. CHILD continues to collect data regarding the children in St. Lawrence County DSS's custody and is working with an attorney in an attempt to stop any future children from falling through the cracks of this child welfare system. Again, my name is Courtney Fantone, and I urge you, the legislators, or anyone who wishes to speak with me regarding their comments, concerns, or experiences with St. Lawrence County DSS to contact me at childhelp.director@gmail.com. Thank you for your time and have a great night.
Anyone else would like to speak? Thank you very much. This time we'll move on to the presentation of resolutions. Mr. Griffin.
I'm looking for the resolution, or we want to have Mr. O'Shaughnessy speak first before the resolution.
Yes, we can do that.
Is that what you're looking for, Mr. Redpath?
We're under discussion.
Point of order, I think we need to move the resolution first.
How come you don't have it?
Oh, I do, I'm looking for it.
Page 22.
Page 2.
So the resolution, Mr. Chairman, that I will offer, this terminology is not with us for resolution, but I will read it for her. financially supporting the efforts of the Major League Fishing, the MLF 2021 Bass Pro Tour Tournament, the state of New York, and modify the 2021 budget and move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Perkins, Mr. Kern. Any discussion? Yes, go ahead, Mr.
Comment about bass spawning season. When is that bass spawning? Spawning season? That was in the beginning or middle to the end of June. So why would we name it tournament when that's taking place? Sorry, I can't hear
Do you have your microphone?
no. Why would you have a tournament when that is taking place? Bass spawning season. People talking about it and all that.
So the question is, from Mr. Smithers is, why would you have a tournament during the spawning season?
Because it's. Really apologize, that's.
Have you heard the question? Why, he wants to know why they would have a tournament during the spawning season.
Well, the spawning season didn't impact the health of the fish. The fish were, I don't know if you had heard the presentation from Mr. Meisner, but the protocol for that tournament was that the fish were caught, weighed, and returned right away to their beds. It was during open bass season, so there was legal, but everything, all the fish were returned, and we don't believe any were hurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think what Mr. Smithers is referring to is a practice called flogging. And that's where the fishermen have a scope that they penetrate the water with, and they can actually see down to the river's bottom. And so see fish on the beds, and then fishing them in that fashion. I talked to a couple different people. I reached out to what I would call very experienced fishermen in the St. Lawrence River. And I had one of the gentlemen was extremely upset by the practice, indicating, as I believe Mr. Smithers is, that it was creating great harm, potential harm to the fish. The other gentleman I spoke to absolutely disagreed and said that he believed that the spawning usually ended in late May. I was not able to find anybody else of the expertise, but so I've done two different beliefs on the practice.
Mr. Shaughnessy, did you want to make a statement?
Well, I just would like to thank the Finance Committee at last month's meeting to bring this up and move it on to the full board. We've worked really hard, as you can imagine, on a shoestring budget to bring this to the North Country, to our community. And as we've stated before, I mean, we started with a little Bassmaster tournament that we started just in Messina, and we've grown. We had the fishing tournament in 2019, and then we have 6 scheduled for this year. We've started them and brought them through Messina, but they definitely affect the whole community, our whole county, St. Lawrence County. We've worked really hard to make sure that it's spread out through and not just restricted to our area. And I hope to continue.
Any questions, Mr. Shaughnessy, or any discussion from the board? Mr. Burke?
Just a question. I'm wondering where the funding, is this NIPA funding that this, the 88,000?
High flow money.
High flow,
yeah.
And that's designated for the river front property. I wholeheartedly support this. I mean, I think I commend Messina for their initiative and bringing this forward. I do think for future years, I think that we should really have cost benefit analysis external. That somebody who really can advise us on the cost versus benefit. But I wholeheartedly support this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to the possible revenue that was created through the tournament, despite some concerns about the practice, most of our hotels and restaurants in the area certainly had an indication that fishermen were present. There was the fancy trucks and the boats were everywhere around Messina. And they had there was a lot of people involved that weren't actually fishing that came to town. I had one really good video from a young lady that was not fishing, but she stayed in Brazier at a bed and breakfast. And I passed it along to Ruth. And that it would serve as one of the best videos to promote this activity in the area. The girl just extremely well-spoken, and spoke to all the benefits and how nice the people are here. And another indication that they were utilizing facilities well outside of Messina when they're in Brazier. She spoke to going to a restaurant in Brazier right across the river, and a grocery store right across the street. So just one of what I believe would be many, many examples of the success that the tournament brings to town.
Yeah, thank you. And that plays throughout the rest of the county. We had gotten a lot of feedback from not only the fishermen who are taking up residences and campgrounds and hotels, buying their gasoline, but also we've had a huge production team that was in the tournament that we just had. They were focusing more on television coverage, and they had the cameraman inside the boat. And they all stayed here and talked about eating and staying in Messina, but they were also moving over towards Canton and Governor, Potsdam. And it just seems to be, especially with the television coverage, that I think that we're going to have an extended season. It's not going to be just during a fishing tournament. People come up here. I don't know if you've noticed, but maybe I should start taking pictures, but I've seen a lot of fishing boats out on the roads in and around our area, and then I'm sure throughout the rest of the county.
Mr. Akers.
Yeah, I support this. One of the things that I like about this, and it's not really clear to the public in the actual resolution, is that the monies are actually, the funding for this has been designated from, it says down there, the number and the New York Power Authority. And that is the high flow monies. The high flow monies that come into the county from the rate of flow that's coming through the power project are over $1 million. And some of that $1 million, Ruth is not here tonight. I don't know, Dylan, you know what the county's portion of that is? Because we send that money out to the village of Messina, the town of Messina, Louisville, the town of Waddington, and the village of Waddington. Do you know what the specific amount that the county receives?
So last year, I'm looking in the account right now, the county had received, it was that $1,037,000.
Okay.
So the overall amount's greater than that, and the county receives around a third of it.
Okay, so the county receives a third, and I believe that's for compensation for the lands that have been affected by the seaway. And that's what the high flow monies are designated for, is for those communities along the river that when the power project went in that were affected, their property values, the loss of the land. This is really not taxpayer money, although it's tax monies that go into the general fund that we use in our endeavors for expenses here at the county. Mr. Chairman, I would like to offer an amendment to the resolution that would define that down at the bottom of the resolution, or near the bottom where it says, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Legislators financially support the efforts of the Major League Fishing MLF 2021 Bass Pro Tour Tournament in Messina, New York. And this is what I'd like to add, that the funding for this venture would be solely from the high flow monies that are designated to those communities along the river that were affected by the Seaway project. And if there was I would entertain a second to that.
Second by Ms. Kern.
And if I can
And Ms. Haggard?
if I can speak to the amendment, I think that the public needs to know that these are where the monies are coming from. And also for those that are organizing these tournaments, that it's a limited source of funds. And there may not be, as you see from the flow of the heights of the river right now, those monies may not exist next year. But it's a return of of monies to those communities for them to invest in these type of ventures that will benefit those communities as a result of what the Seaway did and how it changed the environment and the property values along the river. And I think that's important. So, thank you.
Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you. A couple questions. Dylan, do you have who the other recipients of that diploma are?
Yes, just a moment, please. So Madrid Waddington Central School, Messina.
What's that? Madrid Waddington School?
Messina Central School, the county, town of Louisville, town of Messina, town of Waddington. I believe that's it.
Village also.
A village of Messina, village of Waddington, yes.
Yeah, I'll support it this year. I don't know how any of us can do it without it. I don't recall Bassmasters, the 30,000 we released having the same situation.
That's correct. I think you're correct.
So we're not being even at all, I guess. When you negotiated a 6-year deal or 6 tournament thing, where was the funding going to come?
We haven't negotiated both the year.
Or the 6 tournaments for this year, where did you plan the money come from?
We had set up funding to tourism budget line item in the Messina town budget.
Okay, so you plan on paying it out of pocket originally, or for having the ability to pay it out of pocket? Okay, like I said, I'll support it this year. I think this board as a whole, I know Ogdensburg planning one of these too. I agree with Tony, what's it called, the site thing? There's a lot of people upset with whatever that's called. I don't call that fishing, I call that laying on your belly trying to entice the fishing bite. I don't call that fishing. But I do like the fact that they let the fish go. So even if they are spawning, which there are late season spawners, even if they are spawning, the chance of that bass going back onto that site is much better than taking it all the way down the line, wherever it's going to end up. So I'll support it. This board as a whole, and technically, no, it's not taxpayer money, but yeah, it is taxpayer money because it goes into the whole general fund. That's what we are. We're a fund that takes this money and we disperse it. You could say it could be funded through sales tax, you know? We're using the high water flow because it seems to make sense, but I can see how it could come out of bed tax, you know? So the funding mechanism, what I would encourage all these entities is to come to us before you book 6 tournaments and see what sort of funding we think will be available instead of the last minute. The first tournament was in action and we were going at it, you know, we already had one on the water. So that's just my thought. We as a board just got to figure out how we're going to fund it and the cost benefit analysis that John mentioned. I'll support it.
Mr. Lightfoot.
I support the original resolution, and I can't support the amended resolution. I think that the wise thing to do would be to seek the counsel of the treasurer and the county administrator before we have a knee-jerk reaction to this and bring forward an amendment to the resolution. It doesn't make a whit where this money comes from. It all comes out of the same bag. And I just don't want to see things get complicated by amending the resolution that I think we can, at least the majority of this board is going to support. Nothing against the thrust. I understand completely why Legislator Akers wants to see it done in that manner, but I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think in the absence of the county administrator or the weighing in of the county treasurer that it is a smart thing to do. We've had resolutions come to the chair, come to the floor regarding other things that sometime later we wish we hadn't done it that way.
Mr. Reagan.
I just want to concur with Legislator Lightfoot. I think people who live along the shore in Hammond, in Morristown, in the town of Oswegatchie, in the city of Ogdensburg, as well as Lisbon, have all been affected by the high water and the notion that the money should be segregated to only benefit certain towns downstream is not a wise decision. I think, as Mr. Forsythe has pointed out, it would be wise for the board to look at all these requests at some point in the future, so that a comprehensive program can be developed. But tonight, I'm going to support this because I think it's important for the St. Lawrence River to be regarded as one of the top bass fishing areas in North America and the world.
Mr. Akers.
So the purpose of the amendment, I believe, is to limit the financing coming out of the actual taxpayers' pockets. I totally believe this high flow money belongs to those communities that were affected by the river. Lisbon, in the agreement and recertification, opted out. Lisbon got their land back. If you look at the Bassmasters, and Dylan can confirm this, I'm not asking you to do it tonight, although it's not stipulated in the actual resolution, the monies for the Bassmaster tournament, the 30,000, actually came out of the DICA monies. That's what I believe. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's where those monies came from. So in this specific instance, it's interesting that I think with Mr. Reagan, which I think he realizes, I know he does, realizes the value of these tournaments and what they do for St. Lawrence County. This is what we have. We have fishing, we have hiking, we have the mountains, we have snowmobiling. It's all part of the recreational package. This is what we have. Our industries, what we had, our major industries here in Messina are shrinking. We're down to one, and that's very limited, 600 employees. So we know we need to promote what we have, and I agree with that. But at the same time, you do have communities in Governor or the southern parts of the county. I know we've done a lot with the trails that are saying, hey, how come it's my taxpayer dollars are going to the river? What I'm saying is, if you designate these monies that are directly related to high flow monies, it specifically is for those communities. That's the design, is for the communities along the river. It's not taking money away for Governor or Harrisville or Star Lake or Harrisville, you know what I'm saying? So that's what the purpose is. My purpose is, and maybe Mr. O'Shaughnessy won't like it because he's looking at the river and saying, we're not getting any money next year because there's not any high flow money. My objective is, this is the money that is for the communities. It's not tax generated. The idea, and I was on the school board when this happened, because the task force was floundering in the negotiations. And Kendall Strait was our superintendent at Myocarditis. He got involved in the negotiations. That's how Myocarditis ended up with money. That's how Messina Central got the money. And Mr. Bryan, who was the county administrator, got involved. And that's how the county got involved, got money. And if you read Damn Politics by Tom Snyder, you'll find out how this process all worked out and the conflicts of interest and everything. It was kind of a mess. But at least in this case, these are high flow monies. These are designated from the flow of the river, the excess power that's generated that is spread out amongst those communities which Dylan listed off. And this is a way of actually putting a finite resource on the availability of funds for these type of tournaments. Now, Ogdensburg is not part of this agreement, I understand that, but that could be addressed and that could come before a board if they want to do a full vote, whether Ogdensburg wants money for their tournaments, which the county decides. But in this particular case, Messina, Village, Town, and Waddington, Louisville, this is actually, I believe, their monies. They deserve this money to put on their tournaments. And I'll speak to it, the day that they were practicing, there were 25 boats and trailers in Waddington. So I know there were boats and trailers in Ogdensburg. I know there were boats and trailers in Messina. But there's tremendous impact, more than the Bass Elite Series that I saw in Waddington for this event. And that's why I support it. Thank you.
Ms. Haggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are we discussing the amendment now?
This is the amendment.
Okay, I support what Mr. Write this down, everybody, what Mr. Akers says.
Yes, go ahead.
I question, it kind of reminds me of the discussion we had with the Indian land claims. There was a strong sentiment that a big chunk of that, if it ever comes, should go to Brazier and Messina. Because they are proximal and they're the ones losing the land. And I guess for my own edification, it doesn't change my support, the ultimate support, but I guess I'm wondering, this money, how it was divided up, was it intended for the county in general, their portion, or was it intended for the county in general? And that Waddington got a piece, Messina got a piece, and the two school districts also got a piece. I'm asking a question because it's always helpful to know if it was earmarked for a specific purpose, then we probably all can follow that purpose. But if it wasn't earmarked, if it was divided up for the two communities, the two school districts, and the county at large was given it, then that's a different equation as far as I'm concerned. I'd just like to know what the answer is.
Mr. Akers?
So on the school board, that's my recollection. Those were the principals that were actually involved. And I believe that, said I wasn't there, I just recently read the book. That's how, I know from my involvement on the school board, that's how it was done. The school districts got involved. There seemed to be lack of leadership, definition about how things were going to be done. And I think the county, by getting involved, I think it, because the power authority doesn't pay taxes on that land, that they lost something too. But, we're talking 2003. So I wasn't involved. I don't know, Mr. Button, you're young in then, but you recall anything from 18 years ago? I'm not asking for testimony here.
I was still in college at the time, enjoying my stay in Texas. I don't know from 2003. I can't speak for my knowledge while I've been with the county. As you know, that comes up on a 10-year review. My understanding was that it was earmarked specifically for each of the entities to utilize as the entities needed to. That there was no specific designation as to how that money had to be utilized by each of the entities, but it was separated according to the percentages for each of the communities. In fact, there are percentages, there's a list of percentages that are assigned to each of the individual municipal entities based on the high water money that comes in. It goes to the treasurer. The treasurer, once it's received, has to distribute out according to that high water receipt.
It may be by population assessment, I don't recall that.
I can tell you that having seen the chart, it doesn't identify, at least on the chart, what the basis was. There's a percentage assigned to each community, assigned to the county as well, and each of those communities, based on the amount that's distributed to the treasurer actually then goes out and cuts the checks associated with each of those communities. Mr. Zadinsky, you haven't,
Thank you, Mr.
go ahead.
Chairman. I think we've been successful in doing something that we're very good at. It's making something simple and making. Just,
Got a point.
I've never seen a body that's any better at it than we are. I think everyone is in favor of the resolution. I think, I know I am. I understand the benefit. Tourism is what we need in St. Lawrence County. Whether it's Messina, whether it's Devon or Cranberry Lake, wherever the tourism is, it benefits the county. I think in regards to Mr. Akers' amendment, I understand that he wants, I think his desire is that folks that we represent, they know where the money's coming from. And I trust that our friends in the press will take care of that. So I guess I see no reason to amend the original resolution.
Ms. Curran?
Can we just call the question, yea or nay?
I have one person that I want to speak to.
Just call the question. Just call the question, or did you not? You can't call the question with a question.
Okay, call the question, period, exclamation point.
Needs a second. Second, all in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, so the question to call. Now my question to the attorney is, this amendment is going to require a roll call, like the original resolution is going to be required, or is it just a simple majority?
Not on the amendment.
Okay, so on the amendment, all in favor, raise your hands, say aye. Vote, I guess. So all in favor of the amendment, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
On the screen.
I think there's just 5.
On the screen.
6. 6, oh, you're on there, okay, Nicole. So there's 6. Now, that means the amendment is lost. And so now, let's go to the original, yes, Mr. Arkwood?
Discussion on the original.
The original resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Shaughnessy, I know you live on a beautiful home on the Grass River, but I'm guessing that you're not an avid fisherman. Maybe I'm wrong in that. And I'm guessing that you are under advisement for these tournaments by Mr. Meisner, right? Correct. How observant? In light of the concerns that we do have around the flogging issue and the timeframe in which the first tournament, and if I'm not mistaken, even for the conservative people who think that maybe the spawning was over at that time, would agree that by the next tournament, that's not going to be an issue. So if I could just ask that you would seek out an opinion, a strong opinion from somebody in regards to the potential damage this could be causing to the species during the tournament by having the practice as well as the time.
Well,
for next year.
I do live on the Grass River and I'm not an avid fisherman, but I do know that in talking with our fishing tourism director, Mr. Meisner, that the spawning is over. And in fact, we are utilizing a different format in this next tournament, the Pro Circuit, where they will be bringing the fish in at the end of the day and have them weighed and then release fisher, which is sticking a needle. You want me to go on to show you what I can, what I do know about fishing? But anyway, yes, so it'll be a different format. They do practice, and we've been assured that it will not affect the spawning, any spawning of the bass of the St. Lawrence River. Thank you.
Mr. Forsythe.
Leading Nicole is our member representative of the Fish Advisory Board, I believe. It might be nice to hear from them on this somewhere down the road, if you could relay the message. I'm a little disheartened to hear that the fishing tournament is going to be in that format, I must admit. I guess we'll have to address that as it goes. I do know fish spawn later than what some people may think, but I just go by my doc. I go by, I'm reliable. 48 years, 50 years. I'll still support it, but yeah, I don't like the idea of that second Christmas.
Mr. Lightfoot.
As you all probably recall, at the Finance Committee, I voted against this. And I gave my reasons at the time for voting against it, because of what I perceived was a lack of information. In getting an expense sheet without a corresponding revenue sheet just didn't do it for me. After a little bit of ado, if you will, I contacted Supervisor O'Shaughnessy, and within 2 hours, he had exactly what I asked for, and got it to me so that I would have it available for tonight. I want to thank him publicly for that, because I think that for the 2 weeks prior to getting that information, it was sort of a bumpy road trying to get it. And I want to thank him for it. I want to publicly thank him for it, and particularly for the way he did it, gentlemanly, exactly what I asked for. No excuses, no reasons why I shouldn't give this to you. Very cooperative, and I thank him for that. And I think that if the people that are running the tournament are running it the way that you take care of business, that at least it'll be a financial success. You'll have enough money to pay what you're going to expend in your bills. And I know that's not the reason for the tournament, but I'm hoping that we will see a lot of benefit from this. Not only from the meals served, the hotel rooms rented, the gasoline purchased, and everything else that goes along with it. And then the exposure of the people who come up here to our wonderful surroundings. So I thank you very much, Mr. O'Shaughnessy, for being the gentleman that you are and what you did for me, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further discussion. We'll have a roll call vote. Kelly.
Curran?
Yes.
Reagan?
Yes.
Forsythe?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Sheridan?
Yes.
Smithers?
Yes.
Denisha?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Akers?
Yes.
Fay?
Yes.
Haggard?
Yes.
Fiaco?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Arquette?
Yes.
Terminelli?
Yes.
15 yes.
Carrie.
Thank you, everybody.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Mr. Lightfoot.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign amended contracts for funding received from New York State Oasis to St. Lawrence County as pass-through funding to approved agencies, and modifying the 2021 budget for community services, and move for its adoption.
So second by Ms. Kern. Any discussion? No discussion? Roll call vote.
Reagan?
Yes.
Forsythe?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
Yes.
Sheridan?
Yes.
Smithers?
Yes.
Denisha?
Yes.
Perkins?
Yes.
Akers?
Yes.
Fay?
Yes.
Haggard?
Yes.
Fiaco?
Yes.
Burke?
Yes.
Arquette?
Yes.
Terminelli?
Yes.
Curran?
Yes.
15 yes.
Carrie. Mr. Lightfoot.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a cooperative agreement with the North Country Initiative, NCI, for Promised Practices Funds, and modifying the 2021 budget for community services, and move for its adoption.
Is there a second? Ms. Kern. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, roll call, excuse me, roll call vote. All right.
Forsythe?
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Haggard,
Yes.
Diaco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
15 yes.
Carried. Mr. Lightfoot.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a facilities rental agreement with the Augsburg Free Academy for use of the football field for an opioid overdose awareness community event. Move for its adoption.
Second by Mr. Kern, Mr. Smithers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Lightfoot.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with Tony Hoffman for the opioid overdose awareness community event. Move for its adoption.
Second by Ms. Kern and Mr. Perkins. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Lightfoot.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign contracts with school districts for preschool special education transportation services. Move for its adoption.
Seconded by Ms. Kern and Mr. Smithers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Ms. Kern.
I have one more from Lightfoot.
Oh, sorry, I skipped over one more for you. No, okay, go ahead, Mr. Lightfoot.
Which one did you skip over? I don't have.
On page 6, I have one that's about authorizing the chair to sign contract with the school district.
Just did that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Not that one.
all right, so
I
now,
have
Ms. Kern.
a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a memorandum of agreement with the United States Army Garrison, USAG, Fort Drum for the sharing of radio frequencies.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Lightfoot. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Ms. Kern?
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution proclaiming July 18th to 24th, 2021 as probation, parole, and community supervision week.
Seconded by Mr. Perkins, Mr. Smithers. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Ms. Kern?
Mr. Chairman, I have a resolution proclaiming June 27th as National HIV Testing Day in St. Louis County.
Seconded by Mr. Reagan and Mr. Fay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign an amended contract for J.E. Sheen Corporation for the Jones Road over West Branch of St. Regis River Project and modifying the 2021 budget for the Department of Highways for restoration of capital highway improvement funds funding. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Kern. Any discussion? No discussion? Yeah, wait.
I'll be abstaining.
Abstaining, so noted. Roll call vote, Cal?
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Abstain.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Haggard,
Yes.
Diaco,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
14 yes, 1 abstain.
Motion carries. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution approving supplemental agreement number 2 with Barton and Judas, DPC, for construction inspection services for the Northumberland Street Bridge over Morristown Bay project, bid number 3341-380. I move this resolution.
Second by Mr. Lightfoot. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the acquisition of a parcel of land and a permanent easement on the adjoining property for the construction of a county highway facility in the town of Potsdam, and authorizing the chair to sign a supplemental agreement with Brooks Washburn Architect for professional engineering services and modifying the 2021 budget for the Department of Highways. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Forsythe. And Ms. Kern. And Mr. Perkins? No? Okay. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Burke.
I won't be supporting this. I think that an RFP was indicated. This may be a good deal, I don't know, but short of doing a search, you don't know that. So I won't be supporting it.
Mr. Burke?
I'll be abstaining.
Abstaining? Mr. Akers?
I think this is a great opportunity for the future needs of the county. We're putting up a building here in Russell on county-owned land that we own for the storage of 6 trucks. So in the same building, a fuel depot. We're also doing the same in Lisbon at our county solid waste site. We attempted to put one in the village of Potsdam on the town of Potsdam property, which we do not own. It didn't seem to work out. This is a wonderful opportunity with lots of space for our future needs. And future needs would be actually, in the future, hopefully moving what we have here in the village of Canton with the noise, the backup alarms, the blowing sand and salt, the grant quarters that we have, that we can move out and be in a situation where we have space to grow, space that we can assemble bridges, offload our structural steel so that we can work on it in an open area in the space. We'll start there with the same footprint that we had planned and have approved for the Russell and Lisbon sites, and that would be the building with storage for 6 of our trucks. And the opportunity to get our trucks undercover with the electronics, the fuel emissions, that we can service them and do some small repairs there. But this is a plan for the future, which I wholeheartedly wish that everybody would support.
Any further discussion? No further discussion. Okay, Kelly, let's have a roll call vote, please.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Abstain.
Akers,
Yes.
Bay,
Yes.
Haggard,
No.
Piacco,
No.
Burke,
No.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
3 no, 1 abstain, 11 yes.
Motion carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution declaring default of the Norfolk Bakery LLC regarding the agreement to pay on a tax delinquency and authorizing the chair to sign an agreement between the New York Environmental Protection and Spill Compensation Fund and the County of St. Lawrence, New York, regarding a tax delinquent property, and move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Mr. Burke.
Aye.
Mr. Burke? Go ahead. Sorry about that, Mr. Burke.
That's okay. I won't be supporting it. I think it's the bakery is coming out of a really tough year with illness and the COVID. And again, you know, I think our county attorney has done a great job in trying to work with the Norfolk Bakery. However, I don't think the timing is right for this, and I won't be supporting it.
Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, efforts to work with bakery we're beginning in an agreement in 2018, much prior to COVID. We've spent considerable length of time on this, trying to work with the individuals and reaching a compromise and actually a solution to this delinquency. And the time is now for us to foreclose on this property and actually get it cleaned up.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed to the resolution?
Nay.
We have, how many people?
4.
1, 2, 3, 4. Count 4 hands. 5 down, only second hand. Just kidding. 4. And so the motion carries. Resolution carries. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign an agreement with New York Environmental Protection and Steel Compensation Fund regarding tax delinquent properties owned by Irene Carter, and move this resolution.
Seconded by Ms. Turner. And any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to substitute this resolution that we have in our handout for the resolution that has the correct numbers, which is on our desk. You will notice that in the one that we received earlier during the finance meeting, it had the village of Hoxton paying $21 in workers' compensation, and that is definitely incorrect. As you'll see in the paper on your desk, their total bill is $150,000. I know Mrs. Haggard's not going to agree with me, it seems more reasonable. So I would ask that we substitute this resolution on our iPads for the resolution on our desk.
All in favor of substituting this resolution?
We need a second first.
Second.
Oh, second by Mr. Perkins. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
So what we have is the correct numbers, and Mrs. Haggard is in agreement, and so Mr. Button, I think, would like to speak to this. Mr. Chairman, if I could have Mr. Button speak.
Thank you. I would actually like to thank Mrs. Haggard, and I suspect a couple of other communities would like to thank Mrs. Haggard too, because as a result of having caught that, we went from having 19 out of 32 communities or 32 plan participants experiencing a decrease to 21 plan participants experiencing a decrease. Now, the Village of Potsdam did not experience the decrease that originally we were looking at, as Mr. Akers was kind enough to point out. But the vast majority of the plan participants will experience a fairly decent decrease with this. The largest of which obviously is the town of Messina. The town of Messina, this is the first year in which the Messina Memorial Hospital payroll and titles associated with the risk will not be included in the formula. And as a result, they saw a 713,000 or thereabout decrease from their original portion, which is far more in line with what we anticipated would happen once they dropped out. And I believe I indicated a couple of years ago when the original change in MMH took place that was likely going to be approximately the drop that they would experience at that time. So, like I said, 21 plan participants will experience a decrease now as a result. Okay, any more discussion on the substitute resolution? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution establishing the 2021 Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, known as WIA budget, and move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Lightfoot. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That's roll call.
Roll call vote.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Smithers,
Yes.
Denisha,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Akers,
Yes.
Fay,
Yes.
Haggard,
Yes.
Yakko,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
Arquette,
Yes.
Terminelli,
Yes.
Curran,
Yes.
Reagan,
Yes.
Forsythe,
Yes.
Lightfoot,
Yes.
15 yes.
Motion carries. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a contract with the New York State Department of Criminal Justice Services for the AIDS prosecution grant. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Ms. Kern. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a lease agreement with the Development Authority of the North Country, known as DANC, for office space at the Human Services Center. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Mr. Kern. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Mr. Perkins.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the filling of vacancies and move this resolution.
And a second by Mr. Lightfoot. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers.
Mr. Chairman, I know this is my responsibility as finance chairman to bring forth this resolution, but I plan to speak against it. I would ask that Vice Chairman Denisha read this resolution.
Mr. Denisha.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a memorandum of understanding with Franklin Mackin III, collect delinquent taxes, fees, and penalties, and forgive the interest only associated with real property known as 3030 Russell Road, John Russell, County of St. Lawrence.
Just before that, Mr. Denisha.
I'm sorry, Larry, I should have told you earlier, but I thought maybe I was mixed up. It's the one before that, 20, number 20.
You weren't in favor of that other one?
Well, no, I'm saying that.
48?
Yes. Go ahead.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution on approving the proposed bankruptcy restructuring plan for Purdue Pharma LP, authorizing a vote in favor of the proposed company settlement regarding manufacturing distribution of opioids and
Second by Mr. Perkins and Mr. Forsythe. Any discussion? Mr. Akers.
So I opposed this resolution back when we got into this, of whether we wanted to join the suit, I think probably 2 years ago, Mr. Button. I expressed my opposition to that. And the points that I wanted to make was that this was a legal drug that was manufactured by this company. It took years to bring it to the market under going regulation and scrutiny. And really the problem was that this was strictly a doctor-patient responsibility. That the doctors with their 8 to 10 years of education, I find it hard to believe that they did not know that this could be used or abused as a narcotic. And still today, doctors are handing out prescriptions for this drug that could be judged to be exceeding what their necessary response would be. And because of this, I think what it ends up is that the cost of prescription drugs, because of this, will be added on to other drugs that are available for the public's health. And it really takes away the responsibility from the doctors. Much like tobacco, people smoke tobacco willingly. I mean, it almost says on the packet, you know, smoke this will kill you. This is a little bit different, just being a prescription drug and the addiction qualities of it. But the responsibility is the doctors and the patients, and that's why I will continue to oppose it.
Mr. course I will.
Mr. Button, do you happen to have a reading from the court, how they came with this decision and what they were found guilty of?
I do.
A short version.
I can give you a short version.
Yeah.
Okay. So initially, this matter actually started out with a DOJ action back in 2006. In 2006, the DOJ prosecuted these companies essentially criminally, associated with the belief that the pharmaceutical companies had marketed studies to the doctors that had intentionally deceived them regarding both the efficacy of the treatment as well as with respect to the potential for addiction associated with these materials. Not that they didn't say that it wasn't an addicting substance, but that the doctors could prescribe them at higher levels than they now know that they can. The DOJ actually secured a resolution on the initial prosecution, which then moved to a class action suit amongst both the original prescribed individuals as well as the municipalities. We joined in as a named municipality on the suit through Simmons Hanley Conroy, which was the law firm that was secured to handle our outside interests and had originally been a part of the 2006 action that had included a closed class in the DOJ. So they already had a fair amount of experience associated with this. I know that there are about 3,000 municipalities across the country, at least according to the documentation that I have, that have been a part of this litigation. I know this litigation did not only include Purdue Pharma, but included Purdue Pharma, Johnson & Johnson, Teva, which was a pharmaceutical distributor. It really was geared towards not only the manufacturer, but the distributors, because they had been worked, at least as alleged, in tandem with each other for the distribution of the narcotic at the local levels.
Okay, so there was some responsibility assigned to them.
Yes.
Okay, thanks very much. You used the term tobacco stop. When I was here for the original tobacco stop, back, I think it's there in 2007, we signed on to that as well. Tobacco back at the time, I was working on my excavator the other day, and Bob and Tom, we were talking about the Marlboro man advertised on the Flintstones. And the Winston tastes good like a cigarette. Everyone Beverly Hillbillies. So they targeted young individuals. So there's a responsibility. So everyone has a responsibility. I think we'd be remiss not to have pursued this. I don't like lawsuits any better than anyone else, but I think we'd be remiss to let this go by. Thank you.
Ms. Turner.
I'm going to support this because part of being a pharmaceutical company is understanding what can go on with your product. In 1961, they started using thalidomide to give pregnant women because they noticed that while they were treating other disease processes with it, there was less nausea, there were fewer problems. So they gave it to pregnant women, and for a while, after they knew children were being born and formed, they continued to use it. They had liability. In 1990, oral ofloxacin seemed like the wonder drug to treat gonorrhea and other STDs because you could give one dose and it was done and it was over with. But then multiple people had seizures and other problems because it crosses the blood-brain barrier. The people who made OxyContin knew that they were putting together a medication that had multiple layers that dissolved over time. And they knew, and it was in their warning, do not crush because it's lethal. But still, they put it out on the market. And one of the first things we ever talked about in medicine, I'm still a nurse then, is this is not going to be a good idea because one, people are going to be hooked on it, and two, somebody's going to crush it and snort it, and then they're going to be dead. And that's exactly what happened. They knew that it had the potential to be lethal if it was used wrong. And you can't put something out on the market because anybody that has ever used will tell you that they just kind of sit around and try to figure out, like, oh, well, what can we do with this? They knew they had liability and they should pay for it. And I don't think this amount of money is nearly enough to cover what these drugs have done in this county to people or their children or all the other things that have happened. Thank you.
Mr. Barker.
I agree with what Reed said. And in addition to that, anybody who wants the facts of what happened with this, there's a science podcast. If you have Siri on your iPhone, just ask for the science podcast. And it gives a good history of what happened at Purdue and the fact that they came out with a 160 milligram tablet initially, claiming that it would be a sustained dose, like Rita said, time lapse medication. And the sad part, the real travesty here is that the family that perpetuated this have been sheltered. They're only getting, I think, 5 to 7 billion from this company who made billions and billions off the backs of people who and families who will pay for it for years to come. So that's the real travesty, is that that the people who perpetuated this, people who told the doctors that this was safe if you follow this particular protocol, and not to say that there weren't some unscrupulous doctors as well, but the drug company is the moving force here, and they haven't begun to pay anywhere near what they should.
Any further discussion, Mr. Akers?
Mr. Button has his hand up there.
Go ahead, sorry, just so that you're all aware, there was a Department of Justice memo that was released this past year associated with the 2006 action with respect to Purdue Pharma that indicated that the DOJ at the time that they reached their initial settlement in 2006 had intended to file charges and indict the company for mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy with respect to the sale and distribution of OxyContin. Straight.
So I don't dispute the damage that has been done. It's been tremendous damage to families here in St. Lawrence County. And it's really responsible for, once they actually, I think they changed the ingredients with the OxyContin that actually made you nauseous, that they started using the Canadian supply. Then the suit is, the Canadians followed suit, changing the makeup of it. Then immediately, people went to heroin and methamphetamine. So I don't dispute that. But you couldn't buy OxyContin. You can't buy it direct from pharma. You need to go through a doctor. I maintain all along with their 8 to 10 years of medical education. They continue to prescribe these pills, and the responsibility lies with them. It's a legal drug, and it's a useful drug for eliminating pain. It has addictive qualities. The responsibility lays with those who are writing the prescriptions. Tobacco, go back to the tobacco, it was a choice. The Obama administration brought up the criminal charges back in then, and they were quickly bought out, if I recall. Is that correct, Stephen?
Sorry?
In the Obama administration, where the initial charges were made against these companies.
Actually, it was in 2006, so I believe it actually predated the Obama administration.
So, so that's what I look at it, and that's what I feel. I have the same feelings about tobacco. It's a willing choice, people who did it. This is different. These are doctors that had to prescribe it. They knew, they know now. They know now.
Any further discussion? No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Mr. Akers?
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign a memorandum of understanding with Franklin Macklin III to collect delinquent taxes, fees, and penalties, and forgive the interest only associated with real property known as 30 Pine East Russell Road, Town of Russell, County of St. Lawrence, State of New York, tax map number 147.002-2-6, pursuant to Article 2 of, Article 2 or Article 11, Stephen?
Article 11, sorry.
Article 11, the real property tax law. I move this resolution.
Seconded by Ms. Kern, Mr. Denison.
Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Perkins.
Mr. Chairman, I offer a resolution authorizing the chair to sign an access agreement with the town of Pierpont Veterans Memorial Fund to establish and erect a monument on county property dedicated to honoring St. Lawrence County local veterans who fit its adoption.
Seconded by Ms. Kern, Mr. Smithers, Mr. Arquith, Mr. Denisha, Mr. Lightfoot, and I'd like to add my name to it. Think I got it, but Mr. Draken. Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
But wait a minute, you want discussion on it? Got discussion.
Wonderful idea.
Yeah. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, next, I don't know if the county administrator is going to be able to talk to us tonight or not. Is she available?
We're going to be pushing off the county administrator's report till next Monday.
Okay.
I will mention one thing though. Chairman, you had mentioned that CDP had an issue with release of funds being untimely from the state. I did reach out to the executive director, Felicia Dumas, and shortly after you had brought it up to the board, and they had just received notice that they were to have funds released, and they were to have them within 15 days. This was a couple of weeks ago. We did talk about how the county experiences similar issues, although maybe in a little better standing to weather them sometimes, and how Ms. Dumas said that she may reach out to her counterparts around the state to work with counties to bring resolutions forward, urging all of our state representatives to release funds more timely and get these contracts going in a more timely fashion. So we'll be looking at maybe that later in the year to do. Looking later in the year to do that.
Thank you. Good news for our weatherization program. Thank you very much, Bill. How about old business? Anyone have any old business to bring up, Mr. Forsythe?
Yeah, I've got one resolution. It's not on our desk. It's just, we've talked about it several times amongst ourselves. I'd like to offer a resolution supporting Ogdensburg, have this board support Ogdensburg in their efforts to have home rule legislation within the city boundaries so that they can collect the additional 1% sales tax, much like the county does in the rest of the area. And hopefully I can get a second.
Mr. Reagan?
Yes, I'd like to second that.
Okay. Any discussion on that? Go ahead.
Thank you. I know we talked about it and it's been going on and lingering, and I just figure it's time to get this done. As you know, the city attempted through legislation, which didn't pass the assembly apparently, or wasn't brought up, to be able to collect, they decided to free on. So now they like to collect the additional 1% generated within the city limits, much like we do. It's home rule legislation. We've all supported home rule legislation. That's what got us out of the jam of 2013. The city supported us wholeheartedly, as well as the towns and villages supported us wholeheartedly in the endeavor. I'd just like to pay it back, and as a board, approve it. Support, show them that we support them for what they generate within there. They're not asking for any more, just what they generate within their city limits.
Any more discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Reagan.
I'd like to echo what Mr. Forsythe said and remind the board that many people in this room wanted the city of Ogdensburg to preempt, and so they are. I think it's very important that we support the city's efforts in this home rule situation, because when our sales tax comes up for renewal, it will be important that we don't have a problem in the state legislature where they say, you people need to work things out with the city. I think that we as county legislature need to put this issue behind us, work with the city of Ogdensburg, give the city of Ogdensburg the revenues that are generated within the city of Ogdensburg. It's, everyone in this room is well aware that, the city of Ogdensburg struggles because of its high tax exempt property. And by giving them the opportunity to collect the sales tax that's generated within the city, we'll be able to give the city the tools it needs to build back its economy and help generate the revenues it needs to be successful. So I would urge all of my colleagues to join me in supporting this resolution.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify something. This just didn't make it in this session, and they're likely to carry this over to the next session. And all that my colleagues are asking for, if I understand correctly, is just a support of that. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't speak to Mr. Reish in Ogdensburg, and that's what he indicated to me was very important for us to consider. Are you putting forward a resolution on the floor right now? Okay, good. Okay.
Any more discussion, Mr. Lightfoot?
Yeah, this is another one of these come lately resolutions. There's no big rush to do that, to do this. I think that there could be unintended consequences. And I think that it should go through the regular committee process, through finance and then the full board. I will be voting against it.
Any other discussion? Mr. Akers?
The information, when we looked at those scenarios, we asked Dylan Soper to send us, and it came to us on July 12th. And if you look at the equations or the math that was generated, you will see that if Ogdensburg actually gets to retain all of the 1% that's generated within the city, that every town that you represent loses money. So to a tune for the rest of the communities it's on there, July 12th, if you look, pull up Dylan Soper. So I think what was generated in the additional 1%, from what I recall, as a legislator in 2011, was the 1% was to benefit the county to bring it out of the financial doldrums that it was in. And then because we had the previous agreement with the city of the 6.44, the only way that the senator would bring it forth, Senator Ritchie, was if Ogdensburg continued to get 6.44%. Which when we looked at the numbers back in, when we were going through this process, we saw that the city got 900, and I think in 2018 was 937,000. And the rest of the towns shared 1.4 million, and the county took the 83%. And what happened in 2013 when it went into effect, when the city or when the county actually received that 1%, it amounted to about $14 million. And the legislative body immediately gave a corresponding tax decrease. So the purpose of the 1% was for the county to gain additional revenue. And it was only because the city was actually locked into the 6.44 that the senator went forward with it. So if you look at the figures where if we put the city, that the county agrees to take the 6.44% that the city is currently receiving, and then added to the 10% that the towns and villages are receiving, you'll see that, that everyone seems to benefit in that regard. So I won't be supporting it either. The 1% is actually truly was meant for the counties, and I think that's the purpose of it across the state.
Any other discussion? Burke?
I'm not sure how I would vote on this, but I would like to have more discussion on it. I'd like to see some figures. I'd like to make sure that in the process of helping Ogdensburg, we're not shortchanging the rest of our communities.
Mr. Parker?
Move to table.
Move the table. Second by Mr. Smithers. And Ms. Haggard. Motion's been made.
When would you like the table two?
What's that?
Table to one?
To next finance. Is that soon enough?
Yeah.
Too soon? Mr. Finance Chair?
That's fine. Those documents still could provide us with additional information.
At the table to finance.
Motion to table for the finance committee meeting, which is what date?
July
26th.
26th, July 26th, finance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. There's 2 opposed. Carried.
Did you say there were 2 opposed?
What's that?
Who are the 2?
Mr. Reagan and Mr. Forsythe.
Thank you.
New business. Yes, Mr. Forsythe.
2 weeks ago, I brought up the suggestion at finance of instead of increasing our fund balance, we put a little over $4 million away this last year, I think 4 to 6 million the year before. We reduced the property taxes by a little bit, 8-9 cents each year. We've been able to do that 5 of the last 6 years. In my tenure, the way I'd like to leave, and I'd like to see if we can get one person to okay the resolution, I'd like to design a budget, instruct through 12 to design a budget, giving the property taxpayers a 10% reduction for next year. If I can get a, talk about it.
I couldn't hear you. When you get a what?
Ruth to be instructed when preparing the budget to reduce property taxes by 10%, which is about $4 million. If there's a second.
Start.
I would be unwilling to support that, and I hope that my colleagues do, because it would create a lot of unnecessary work for the budget team as we move forward with the construction, with the condition of our roads and bridges, as many bridges as we have out right now, to even consider a 10% property reduction. I know that sounds very good to the property owners out there, but I get continual complaints over the condition of roads and bridges. I think we really need to address that. I think that would be impossible, given the potential 10% property decrease. Just my opinion.
So you'll be against that?
I want to be honest, just saying that I will not support any increases in property tax. I will not support that in budget, but I also won't support a 10% decrease when we have a lot of very valuable uses for that revenue. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
No, point of order. While I agree with Mr. Arquette, there is no resolution by Mr. Forsythe with no second. Unless there's no second, we can't discuss it.
Okay.
So at this point in time.
We're in old business. I was just giving my.
There is a second, you were second?
No.
Mr. Chairman,
Well, I can't hear you.
has your hand up.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it, just because we should have some kind of discussion about what we should do with that. There's a lot of people that have problems with taxes. There's a lot of new properties going back on the tax rolls. And even if the discussion ultimately goes to we should spend more money on roads and bridges, we should have the discussion about what we do. So that's a second.
Is that, it's been seconded, so we have a motion on the floor. And one more time, would you be loud and clear what that motion says?
What I'd like
We
to
don't have
do
anything in writing for it.
is instruct our county administrator to come up with a budget that reduces property taxpayers by 10% in the upcoming year. So the property tax decrease of 10% for the coming year.
As I said, that creates a great deal of extra work for our staff that are already completely overworked during the budgetary season. And, we need to see figures with a homeowner of 100% or $100,000 property value. What type of additional revenue would that bring into that household's budget? And when you say 10%, it wouldn't be very much additional money into a household, but spread all across the county, it adds up to a lot of money. So I just, to bring a resolution with no figures and to suggest that we could just go ahead and do it and have the budget team work harder than they already are to put a budget together that does not increase our property tax, which is a challenge. I don't really think we need to put them through it.
Mr. Spetters?
I gotta say, I agree with the legislator. If we can hold the line on taxes, no increase, no decrease, I think we're doing well. And the way the state is sending money to the county, delaying more, I think we're gonna be glad that we have the fund balance that we do. And with our infrastructure, roads and bridges, we do need to pay attention to those. I would completely agree.
Mr. Donation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's a novel idea to try to. I think it's something that it needs to be discussed at the beginning of the year, their budget process. One of the things we discussed, I guess, a couple years ago, was reduction on the sales tax for home heating fuels. We didn't get any traction on that. That's in my mind, that's a bigger, reducing or eliminating the sales tax on home heating fuel. There's going to be a bigger break. More people. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. But I think without some thought.
Mr. Burke?
Three different ideas. I agree with Tommy. I'm not sure that it should go to roads and bridges. Maybe it's appropriate to go to a tax cut. The problem is that as a group, we need to plan and prioritize what's important, and then have a discussion about what actions to take in accordance with the priority. If the priority is tax cut, then Dave's suggestion is probably going to prevail. But if it's roads and bridges or maintaining fund balance, what we need is to plan and prioritize according to that plan.
Of course, my rationale, right or wrong, is we have an administrator who's been here 7 years, who's gotten us nothing to something, made us to somebody, okay? There's no task that we've asked Ruth, and I'm sorry she isn't there, but there's no task we've asked her, she hasn't been able to accomplish. What I'm saying, our roads and bridges are still gonna be maintained, are still gonna deteriorate. Unless we talk more staff, we've got a boatload work that they're doing now. Both, I don't know how many bridges, culverts, long ones, doing it all. And we're still able to put $4 million in the fund balance through COVID. What I'm saying, and Larry said at the beginning of the year, right now they're starting budget. So to me, when you're starting budget, this is when it's time to start. If it can't be done, it can't be done. And if you don't act, and we did talk about home meeting, but no one's ever brought it to this board to talk about. I'm bringing it to this board to talk about. Right or wrong, Tony disagrees, John may disagree, we all may disagree. But at least I'm making an effort to bring it to the table, talk about it, and that's it. And if it doesn't go any, if people think their property taxes are fine, that's great, I get it. I just think it's time to reward the property tax owners somewhat. It's long overdue. The sales tax that we live on and we talk about and we think it's all ours, 83% of that last 1% wasn't meant to be around forever. You look back to all the history of it, it was to get us out of the jam, but not to be dependent on it forever. We're dependent on it forever. Property taxes don't go away. Just throwing it out there. So, moving on. Yes.
Well, I'd like to add an amendment to it.
We're at.
My amendment would be that at the same time that they're doing that study, to find out whether or not it's ascertainable to decrease the tax by 10%. I would like to have them at the same time, and talked about it a long time, I talked about it at the beginning of this year, have them look at what the effect would be on St. Lawrence County for taking the home heating oil off the sales tax off home heating fuel. Larry and I have been working at that for a long time. I've introduced it years and years ago, it didn't work. I think Larry's introduced it since then. And we mentioned it at the beginning of the year when I took over as chairman. So as long as we're going to be looking at things to investigate in terms of how to help our taxpayers, and because of the fund balance that we're very proud of, that we now look like we might be in a position to help out the folks in St. Lawrence County. Some of them would really appreciate the cut on sales tax on home heating fuel, so they wouldn't have to worry about whether they're going to eat or stay warm in the winters.
I gladly second. That's an amendment.
So the motion's been made and seconded.
You can't make a motion. I believe the chairman can make a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Jim Reagan makes that motion. Go ahead, Jim. Jim's made the motion.
I'll second.
Seconded by Ms. Kern. And seconded by.
No, I wanted to
Okay,
say
Ms.
something.
Haggard, what,
Okay.
Mr. Lightfoot, is that a second?
Ms. Haggard, go first.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Haggard.
Thank you, Mr. Lightfoot,
You're very
Mr. Chair. I hate it when things that I might support go along with stuff I probably wouldn't support. So when Mr. Reagan makes the motion on home heating oil and it gets conflated with the 10% tax reduction, and all I'm doing is sitting here thinking to myself, I think we need a ton more caseworkers in DSS, okay? So there might be the roads and bridges, and there might be, what I heard tonight was we don't have enough people over there to fulfill these people's needs. So anyway, I wouldn't want to mix those things up. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could just add, I said roads and bridges, and I should have said roads, bridges, and services.
I couldn't hear you. Can you
I
say it a
said,
little louder?
in my original comments, I said that we need to fix roads and bridges. I should have better worded it as we have roads, bridges, and other services, that money could be better spent.
So let's just be clear on this cluster. You've got a proposal to reduce property taxes by 81 cents. And then you want to throw in an additional fuel tax reduction, which is about $400,000, which everybody pays tax on their energy needs right now. What you would do is you would shift that burden strictly over to those that own property. That's what we do. You take the sales tax away off of heating, who picks up your 400,000? Anybody who owns property. In the last 5 out of the 6 years, we have reduced taxes. In the 6 years, we left them the same. Our administration doesn't come up with the ideas. We set the tone in the legislative body. The legislative body over since 2015 is we need to get our fiscal house in order, and if we can, we'll reduce taxes. And we've been able to do that largely because of the increase in sales tax and the recovery of the economy. So we all should know that the recommendation for the fund balance in proportion to the $250 million budget that we have should be around 16%. We are not there yet. We are not at the minimum recommendation that the comptroller says, right? So we are short. We still need, and we know that healthcare, we're at what, 3.5 million? 3.5 million? This Wednesday, we're gonna be meeting about negotiations for contracts. And so far, largely because of what happened in the city of Ogdensburg, we got a 3.5% salary increase. We ended up settling at 275 for 5 years with the majority of the people that work for us. Well, we probably could have settled for a half a point less, which really ended up costing us about $1 million. So I think the steady hand on the rudder, this is similar to what the new administration in the city came out promising to get reelected, to reduce taxes by 25%. And they found out how much they could actually do and how much is mandated. I would support lowering taxes incrementally and logically. But back to the fuel tax, that is a direct burden that everyone shares that would be totally assessed on 100% of people who own property in this county.
My understanding, the resolution says we're going to look into, not do it. We're looking into it.
I don't know what the resolution is. I don't have it in front of me.
It's not a written resolution, but it was presented verbally, so that's what we're dealing with. It's a verbal resolution, and it was my understanding, this is not a vote one way or the other for sure. It's to look into the matter.
You have a resolution, I don't know, Kelly, can you read this resolution?
It was Forsyth, was that your, Jim, was that your?
Yes.
And what about Mr. Forsyth? Look into it, okay. You wanted the county administrator to look into it. That's all we're doing here.
Mrs. Terminelli has her hand up.
Mr. Terminelli.
I guess I'm just wondering, typically when we want the county administrator to look into something, don't we just ask her? We don't typically pass a resolution on the floor to have her look into something and run some reports, right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I had my hand up here, go 10 minutes.
Okay, I haven't answered her question yet because I haven't really heard her. She talked too fast. But go ahead. Could you repeat that? And then I'm going to call on Mr. Lightfoot. Repeat what your question was or what your statement was.
I sure will, and I'll go extra slow this time. I was just wondering, if I'm hearing correctly, we have a resolution to look into what the figures might be like if we were to do a 10% reduction on taxes. And I'm just wondering, we don't typically pass a resolution to ask the county administrator or Dylan or somebody else to look into something and run some reports and figures for us. So I guess I'm just wondering, can't we just get the reports and figures and not have it attached to a resolution?
I suppose that is possible, but it was put forth by resolution by 2 members of the legislature here under old new business. So you can do it either way, I would say. Maybe the county attorney got a different opinion.
And procedurally, I'm just trying to figure out where we're at the moment, because it sounded like right now on the floor, we have an amendment that's been seconded that hasn't been voted on a floor vote, trying to establish the at least principle of that floor vote. So
screen.
I heard, I think Mr. Forsyth indicate that he was willing to withdraw his motion. But I think procedurally at the moment, I believe it would require the original amendment, which I think the chair originally did from the seat, that was then adopted by Mr. Reagan and seconded, I believe, by Ms. Kerr. So I believe procedurally, you would have to have the withdrawal of the amendment first and then the withdrawal of the underlying motion if that was going to occur.
Mr. Light.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. If, I guess the presumption is there that the county is pretty well off financially, and that we can afford to, drop upwards of, $4 to $5 million, boom, right then and there, and surprise the budget team with that resolution. But if the county was so flush, why are we bonding for the highway equipment that we did, rolling stock that we have? Why are we bonding for highway buildings and salt storage sheds in Russell and in the town of Lisbon? Why are we, hiring and legislator, never mind that one. We're bringing out 20 additional staff already, either already hired or in the process of being hired. In addition to that, we're looking for office space to house them. Health insurance, as Legislator Akers just alluded to, is gone sky high. In addition to that, we've got a single claim that's going to cost almost $800,000. We're not as flush as we think we are here in the county. We are nowhere near what the state recommends. And if you recall, years ago, the state recommended a certain amount. And when it got to $21 million, the legislature, in its infinite wisdom, probably at a late hour like this, decided that they were going to spend that money. And they did. They spent it right down to nothing, down to a negative number. And we've been able, in a short period of time, through direction to the county administrator, to hold the line and to get this budget down to something that is manageable, reasonable, and isn't the subject of conversation out on the street that the county's taxing the hell out of us, because it isn't. We've been able to reduce it, albeit small amounts, but my goal is to see it below $8 by the time I'm off this board. And it's getting close. It's not going to happen this year, I'm sure, but Tony's right. We've got over 500 miles of roads. We've got over 100 bridges in this county. And we're able to do 30 or 40 miles of road a year at the very most. At that rate, we will never see all of the roads, and I won't talk about bridges, but all the roads in the pristine shape that they ought to be in. So it's not, I guess I'm arguing against both of these pending matters. I'm not in a position to see us eliminate the home heating fuels either. I'd love to see it, and so would everybody else. But we just entered into an agreement with the towns that we're not going to reduce their revenues from sales tax. If we eliminate that, the sales tax is going to go down, and we're going to have to find some other way to fund what we told them they were going to get funded with. So here again, 9 o'clock, we're going to do this again, just because the city of Ogdensburg had the bright idea to do this, a feel-good kind of thing. I'm not in favor of doing it for St. Lawrence County. And either of those resolutions, if they come up, I will vote against.
Sure. It'd be great if we could drop it 10%, 20%, 30%. It would be great. We've dropped it a little bit. each year since I've been here, minuscule. Towns, schools keep going up, even though I talk to my town, ask them to, try to reduce it themselves, because theirs just keeps going up, so that nobody's seeing the relief. So we need to talk to our towns, but we're right here. We have a lot to take care of. We have our bridges, our roads, services. There's all kinds of problems going on that we have to take care of. And like was just said, healthcare up $3 million, and it's just going to keep going up. We have to stay the course we're at. Let the budget team do what they have been doing, come back to us with recommendations. They usually bring us 1, 2, 3 recommendations. Let's work with that. They've been doing a great job right now. We still have to get our fund balance to where it should be before we can do anything else. And our roads, they're horrible. Our roads and bridges, we got to keep taking care of them. So I think we should stay the course as the way we are right now.
Does anyone want to withdraw their second for the motion?
No.
Okay, so any more discussion? Go ahead.
I would say then if they're not going to go back their seconds, that a no vote would follow Nicole's thoughts. And that was my thought when Dave first brought it out, that why would we do it in the form of a resolution? We would direct the county administrator to do that. Well, but I knew procedurally, once he made the motion and Jimmy seconded, then it's on the floor. So I think a no vote on this isn't necessarily a no vote on this 10% or the amendment even. The no vote is on a formal resolution to ask our administrator to move forward. We could just direct her to do that. Thank you.
Each year, Mr. Chair, I guess we're not giving enough weight to our administrator, in my mind, but I could be wrong again. I think Ruth could do it easily. Every year she comes through with a proposal, what if we increase taxes a little bit, which always offsets us with that. What if we decrease taxes a little bit more than the 6 cents, 8 cents, 10 cents? That's all I'm trying to get here. We seem to talk about it, the roads and bridges always come up, everything always comes up, but we never talk about the distant property tax. So now we're talking about it.
My discussion with the county administrator was that she was hoping, not promising, that we'd get under $8 for this year.
Would you like to offer that as my?
Renee would like to.
No, it's just a discussion. I mean, I'm not gonna hold, the county administrator's not here.
Renee had her hand up.
Go ahead, Renee.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. No, and I agree, I think in large part, I'll say with Joe Lightfoot and Rick Perkins had some good arguments. As a member of budget team and as your fiscal officer, I guess I'll start by saying that there is a fund balance policy out there and we have not met it yet. And I think to be talking about disregarding that may be something that you need to look at before you decide to throw out the policy. We have not met the percentage that was stated by our board in that. And I'd like to just also say, just any kind of a blanket $4 million reduction, I think that you're looking at program cuts. You're not looking at being able to provide the services that you do necessarily, because every year we have those built-in increases that we have contractual raises we have to meet. I can tell you right now, I was looking at health insurance today, and it is not looking good for 2021 either. Largely, I know because of the one claim that was just mentioned, but we blew by our budget last year by $2.6 million in the health insurance line alone, and another $1 million in pharmacy. So sales tax has been our saving grace on that and the fact that we budget to add to fund balance every year. So what I think the suggestion right now is kind of counterintuitive to the fund balance policy that now stands. So I just want you to consider that. Additionally, if we start appropriating fund balance to balance our budget, we have to use that every successive year afterwards, unless we find another revenue replacement for that. And we all know there's no new revenues out there. So I just caution you to everybody would love to see taxes drop, but I mean, our biggest problems are our school districts. I used to work there, I know. They are, if you look at your tax bills, that's where the dollars are. I think the county's done a great job of holding things flat. And as a member of budget team, we struggle every year to get that extra 3 or 4 cents, you know, and we count on property tax growth, and sometimes you can't get there. There's a lot of factors involved, and I just wanted to go on record about that. And again, just, you know, remember that we do have a fund balance policy, and we're not quite there yet. We're in better shape, but we've still got room to go on that. Thank you. That's all.
Mr. Reagan.
I'd like to call the question.
Question's been called. Second. Mr. Perkins seconds to call the question. All in favor of calling the question?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, so question.
Just a roll call. And could we have Ms. Kelly actually read the actual resolution? If you can.
So are we voting on the amendment first?
Yeah, the amendment first on sales tax at home.
Mr. Reagan moved to amend to have the county administrator look at removing sales tax from home heating fuel. It was seconded by Ms. Curran. So roll call vote on that.
Yes.
Smithers?
No.
Denisha? Perkins?
No.
Akers?
No.
Fay?
No.
Haggard?
No.
Piacco?
No?
Burke?
No.
Arquette?
No.
Terminelli?
No.
Curran?
Yes.
Reagan?
Yes.
Forsythe?
Yeah.
Lightfoot?
No.
Sheridan?
Yes.
11 yes, 4 no.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, 11 no, 4 yes.
Okay, that amendment fails. Now the original resolution offered by Mr. Forsythe.
Okay.
Did you read that?
Yep. Mr. Forsythe moved a resolution to ask the county administrator to construct a budget to reduce property tax by 10%. Seconded by Ms. Curran.
Okay, so that's the resolution. Is there any further discussion on that? A roll call vote on that, Kelly?
Denisha? Perkins?
No.
Akers?
No.
Fay?
No.
Haggard?
No.
Piacco?
No?
Burke?
No.
Arquette?
No.
Terminelli?
No.
Curran?
Yes.
Reagan?
Yes.
Forsythe?
Yes.
Lightfoot?
No.
Sheridan?
No.
I'm gonna vote no also.
Oh, I'm sorry. Smithers. 12 no, 3 yes.
So that didn't carry. That resolution fails. So now, is that all the old business or new business? I hope. Okay, let's go on to committee reports. Do you have any? No committee reports? We're gonna make a motion to go into executive session if we have a need to. Do we have a need?
We do have a need for executive session for litigation, personnel relating to the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation, and appointments.
Okay, Matt Denner will be joining us in executive session as well.
Motion to go into executive.
Motion to go into executive session been made by Mr. Forsythe, seconded by Ms. Kern. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We're in executive session. Okay, Ms. Kern, do you have any appointments?
I don't have anything on my sheet about it. Oh, Dylan, thank you. So the Office of the Aging Advisory Board, Joan Howlett, 14 High Street, Norwood.
Gail Teal.
And yep, that's been paid. And Gail M. Teal from 162 North Road, Lisbon, New York. For environmental management, we have Terrence Smith, 522 Crescent Street, Ogdensburg, New York. And then for the North Country Home Consortium, David Duff, 64 Woods Road, Hammond.
All in favor of those from Ms. Kern?
Bill, we need a second too, please. A second.
Second.
Oh, yes. Seconded by Mr. Perkins. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Lightfoot?
Appointment to the Office for the Aging Advisory Council expiring 6/7/24, Matthew Manier, Potsdam. And a reappointment to the Board of Health Advisory Board, term expiring 12/31/2026, Kathleen Terrence, MD, Lisbon, New York. Move for their,
Is there a second? Mr. Perkins seconds. Any problems with any of those names? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Mr. Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I offer for reappointment to St. Louis County Workforce Development Board for a term to expire August 31st of 2024, Lynn Blevins from Ogdensburg. And also for St. Lawrence County Trails Advisory Board for terms to expire on July 12th of 2024. Offer up Debbie Christie of Canton, Glasgow, also of Canton, Stanley Hewitt, Bill Calvert in Canton. And unfortunately, Walter Paul has withdrawn his name. His time and effort in the service we greatly must remove these appointments.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Lightfoot. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, now we have chair's appointments. The, what was referred to earlier as the radio committee is, the name now will be the EMS Communication Committee. It's, this group is gonna be starting some work right away. And Larry Denisha is on that committee. He's going to be the chairman of it. Tony Arkwood is also going to be on that committee.
Thank you for the invitation, Mr. Chairman.
Legislator
One of my
Reed
colleagues
Kerner.
was interested in it.
Go ahead.
One of my Democratic colleagues would be interested in the telecommunications committee. Don't jump up. I'll accept.
You got it, Tony. Legislator Kern. Bob Crow, who's a representative for fire. Matthew Annabelle, representative for fire. Matt McDonald, Ogdensburg Rescue. Mark Devers, Governor Rescue. Jason Olson, Messina Police Chief. Sean O'Brien, Sheriff's Office. Matt Denner, County EMS. Jonathan Mitchell, County EMS. And those are the names of the appointments. Is there anyone that would like to make a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. Forsythe and second by Mr. Cagle.
See all those hands?
All in favor?
Night,
Negative.